You're watching the live proceedings of the Senate on this 26th day of June 2024. This broadcast is brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in conjunction with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation.
Kutuita kwa nyadhifa za uongozi katika jamhuri hii yetu. Tukuomba tuwajalie, tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote yatakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi yetu na wale ambao haja zao wamezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. Clerk, to have quorum. Sergeant at arms, kindly ring the quorum bell for 10 minutes.
The Speaker has ordered the quorum bell to be rung, and as we wait for the quorum to be achieved, we'll take a look at the order of business this morning. The Senate Majority Leader will move a motion on the approval of sittings of the Senate to be held in Busia County. That aware that the Senate of Kenya is established under Article 93 of the Constitution, and its main role, as set out at Article 96, is to represent, serve, and protect the interest of the counties and their governments. Further aware of the critical role that the Senate plays in the interlinkage between the national and county levels of government, and the need to enhance the interaction between the Senate and county governments as a means of bringing the Senate closer to the counties and the general public. Acknowledging the successes made during the sittings of the Senate outside Nairobi held in Uasin Gishu, Kitui, and Turkana counties in September 2018, 2019, and 2023 respectively. Further acknowledging the recommendation of the Senate Business Committee that a sitting of the Senate be held away from the traditional premises in Parliament Buildings, Nairobi, during the term of the 13th Parliament, and the subsequent resolution of the Senate made on 8th March 2023 to hold plenary and committee sittings in the counties for a one-week period within the month of September in every session of the 4th Senate, except during an election year, with the objectives to 1. Promote the role and work of the Senate and enhance public awareness regarding the business of the Senate and Parliament in general, highlight existing and new opportunities for engagement in the legislative process, develop and strengthen partnerships at the county level of government, and provide an opportunity to members and staff of county assemblies to learn and share best practices with senators and parliamentary officers. Now, therefore, pursuant to Article 126, Sub-Article 1 of the Constitution, the Senate resolves to hold its plenary and committee sittings in Busia County from the 23rd to 27th September 2024. The Senate Majority Leader will also move a motion on the alteration of the Senate calendar for the third session. The Senate resolves to alter its calendar to proceed on recess at the rise of the Senate on Wednesday, 26th June, morning sitting, and resume its sittings on Tuesday, 16th July, 2024. There are messages which will be presented this morning. One, the message from the National Assembly on the passage by the National Assembly without amendments of the County Allocation of Revenue Bill, Senate Bill number 25 of 2024. The message from the National Assembly on the passage of the mediated version of the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bills number 14 of 2024. The message from the National Assembly on the passage with amendments of the Equalization Fund Appropriation number 2 Bill, Senate Bills number 30 of 2023. And finally, the message from the National Assembly on the passage by the National Assembly of the National Disaster Management Bill, National Assembly Bills number 24 of 2023. The messages will be given by the Speaker of the Senate. There are papers which will be laid on the table of the Senate this morning. Among them, the report of the Commission on Administrative Justice on the status of administrative justice and access to information in Kenya from the year 2012 to 2023. The annual statutory report of the Council of Governors for the period 2022-2023. Report of the Office of the Controller of Budget on County Government's Budget Implementation Review for the first 9 months of financial year 2023-2024. The report of the Controller of Budget on National Government Budget Implementation Review for the first 9 months of financial year 2023-2024. The annual report of the Commission on Revenue Allocation and Financial Statements for the financial year 2022-2023. The report of the Commission on Revenue Allocation on on-source revenue potential and tax gap study of county governments. Another paper which will be laid on the table of the Senate is the Commission on Revenue Allocation recommendation on the basis for equitable sharing of revenue between the national and county governments for the financial year 2024-2025. The report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the Kakamega County Rural Water and Sanitation Company Limited for the year ended 30th June 2022 will also be laid on the table of the Senate. Other papers which will be laid include the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the Kakamega County Rural Water and Sanitation Company Limited for the year ended 30th June 2023, the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the Cherangani Marakwet Water and Sanitation Company Limited. We are waiting for quorum to be achieved this morning for the business of the Senate to begin. And finally, the report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Bungoma Municipality for the year ended 30th June 2023 will be laid on the table of the Senate this morning.
Now, so you may proceed to call the first order.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Senator Chut, have your seat. Minority Leader, kindly take your seat. Need to pass a communication. Honorable Senators, I have a communication to make relating to the resumption of regular sittings of the Senate for Part 3 of the third session and the unprecedented attack on Parliament on Tuesday, the 25th of June, 2024. As you may recall, on Tuesday, the 25th of June, 2024, the Parliament of Kenya faced an unprecedented attack by persons allegedly protesting against the passage of the Finance Bill, National Assembly Bills number 30 of 2024. In this unprecedented action, the alleged protesters breached the security within Parliament buildings, vandalized and destroyed property. In addition, prior to and after infiltrating Parliament buildings, the protesters also vandalized other critical government installations within the Central Business District. Honorable Senators, as you may also recall, the Senate was scheduled to resume regular sittings from the recess yesterday. The regular sittings under Part 3 of the Senate calendar was scheduled to run from the 25th of June until the rise of the Senate on Thursday, 8th of August, 2024. However, in an equally unprecedented occurrence, the Senate was not able to hold its sitting on Tuesday, the 25th of June, 2024, owing to the invasion and disruption by the protesters. While the Senate acknowledges and upholds the right of every citizen to peacefully and unarmed to assemble, to demonstrate, to picket, and to present petitions to public authorities as enshrined in Article 37 of the Constitution, it is important to observe that this must be done within the confines of the Constitution and the law. I take this opportunity to thank the security officers who, under very difficult circumstances, conducted themselves with professionalism to protect lives and property. However, and indeed regrettably, the skirmish has resulted in the loss of lives, injuries, destruction of property, and discretion of the institution of governance. I equally take this opportunity to offer my condolences, and indeed that of the Senate, to the families and friends of all those who lost their lives, and wish the injured a quick recovery. Honorable Senators, as a consequence of this situation, the Senate Business Committee held a special meeting today, Wednesday, the 26th of June, 2024, to deliberate on the implications on the business of the Senate. The Senate Business Committee has ordered for the publication of a supplementary order paper, which has been circulated. At an appropriate time, the Senate Majority Leader will be called upon to give notice of a motion and a motion for the alteration of the Senate calendar. I thank you. Next order.
Order number 3, messages.
Honorable Senator, I wish to report to the Senate that pursuant to Standing Order 46.3, I received the following message from the Speaker of the National Assembly regarding the passage by the National Assembly of the mediated version of the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bills, number 14 of 2024. The message dated the 10th of June 2024 was received in the office of the Clerk of the Senate on Wednesday, 19th June 2024, while the Senate was on recess. Pursuant to Standing Order 46.5, I now report the message. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 41.1 and 154B of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the following message from the National Assembly. Whereas on Monday, 13th May 2024, the National Assembly considered and rejected the Senate amendments to the Division Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bills number 14 of 2024, thereby committing the bill to a mediation committee in accordance with the provisions of Article 112(2)(b) of the Constitution. Whereas on Monday, 13th May 2024 and Thursday, 16th May 2024, the National Assembly and the Senate respectively appointed members to the mediation committee to develop a mediated version of the said bill, and whereas on Wednesday, 29th May 2024, the Senate considered and approved the mediated version of the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bills number 14 of 2024, without amendments and in the form developed by the Mediation Committee. Further, whereas the National Assembly considered the mediated version of the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bills number 14 of 2024, on Wednesday, 5th of June 2024, and passed it without amendments and in the form developed by the Mediation Committee. Now, therefore, in accordance with the provisions of Article 113.3 of the Constitution and Standing Order 154B of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the said decision of the National Assembly to the Senate. I further notify that pursuant to the provisions of Article 113.3 of the Senate of the Constitution, I presented the bill to His Excellency the President for assent on Monday, the 10th June 2024. His Excellency the President assented to the bill on the same day. I thank you. Again, honorable senators, I wish to report to the Senate that pursuant to Standing Order 46.3, I received the following message from the Speaker of the National Assembly regarding the passage by the National Assembly of the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill number 2, Senate Bills number 30 of 2023. The message dated 18th of June 2024 was received in the office of the Clerk of the Senate on Wednesday, the 19th of June 2024, while the Senate was on recess. Pursuant to the said standing order, that is Standing Order 46.5, I now report the message. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 41.1 and 144 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the following message from the National Assembly. Whereas the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill number 2, Senate Bills number 30 of 2023, was passed by the Senate on Wednesday, 21st of February 2024 with amendments and referred to the National Assembly for consideration. And whereas the National Assembly considered and passed the said bill on Thursday, 13th of June 2024 with further amendments in the form attached hereto. Now, therefore, in accordance with the provisions of Article 110 of the Constitution and Standing Orders 41.1 and 144 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the decision of the National Assembly to the Senate. Now, honorable senators, as you may recall, the amendments by the National Assembly to the said bill were circulated via a letter reference SAN/CO/L&P/message 2024-002, dated the 20th of June 2024, pursuant to Standing Order 165.1. At an appointed time, the Senate Business Committee will schedule a motion for the consideration of the amendments by the Senate. This House is guided accordingly. Further, honorable senators, I wish to report to the Senate that pursuant to Standing Order 46.3, I received the following message from the Speaker of the National Assembly regarding the passage by the National Assembly of the National Disaster Management Bill, National Assembly Bills number 24 of 2023. The message dated 19th of June 2024 was received in the office of the Clerk of the Senate on Thursday, 20th of June 2024, while the Senate was on recess. Pursuant to Standing Order 46.5, I now report the message. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 41.1 and 142 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the following message from the National Assembly. Whereas the National Disaster Risk Management Bill, National Assembly Bills number 24 of 2023, was published via Kenya Gazette Supplement number 80 of 31st May 2023 as a bill to establish the National Disaster Risk Management Authority and County Disaster Risk Management Committee and provide a legal framework for the coordination of disaster risk management activities at both levels of government. And whereas the National Assembly considered and passed the said bill on Tuesday, 4th of June 2024 with amendments and in the form attached hereto, now, therefore, in accordance with the provisions of Article 110.4 of the Constitution and Standing Orders 41 and 142 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby refer the bill to the Senate for consideration. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 163, which provides that a bill that originates in the National Assembly be proceeded with by the Senate in the same manner as a bill introduced in the Senate by way of first reading in accordance with Standing Order 144, I direct that the National Disaster Management Bill, National Assembly Bills number 24 of 2023, be listed for first reading in the order paper. That was today, Wednesday, 26 June 2024. Next order.
Order number 4, petitions.
What is your intervention? Certainly not a point of order.
Asante Mstahiki Spika. Mstahiki Spika, tunaelewa ya kwamba jana kulikuwa na maandamano ya amani na Wakenya. Na Spika, pia vile vile tunaelewa kwamba katika maandamano hayo ilifika wakati ambapo askari wetu wa Kenya, polisi, waliweza kufyatua risasi na kuua watu waliokuwa wakifanya maandamano. Wale watu ambao walikufa, Bwana Spika, ni watoto wetu, ni wa Kenya, na ingekuwa vyema hili kama bunge la Seneti kuweza kuchukua dakika moja ama dakika mbili kuweza observe ama kuomboleza pamoja na wale watoto wetu ambao walifariki kwa sababu ya kupigwa risasi na mapolisi walipokuwa wakifanya maandamano ya amani. Kwa hiyo nataka tuweze kuchukua nafasi hii kabla hatujaendelea na taratibu za bunge vile zinazotakikana, kwamba tuko na vitu ambavyo tunatakana tufanye. Tuweze kuchukua dakika moja kukumbuka wale marehemu ambao ni Wakenya wenzetu hivi sasa, ikiwa wamelala ndani ya mochari, wamekufa na familia zao zinasikitika kwa sababu ya kupoteza wapendwa wao. Asante Bwana Spika.
Very well, honorable senators, we shall rise for just 1 minute. We observe 1 minute of silence and we proceed with business. You may take your seats. Next order, clerk.
Order number 5, papers.
The majority leader.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, Wednesday, the 26th of June, 2024. These are the reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the following for the year ended 30th June, 2023. This is the Kakamega County Rural Water and Sanitation Company, Cherangany Marakwet Water and Sanitation Company Limited, the Ruiru Juja Water and Sewerage Company Limited, Bungoma Municipality, the Kakamega County Rural Water and Sanitation Company Limited for the year ended 30th June 2022, report of the Commission on Administrative Justice on the status of administrative justice and access to information in Kenya from the year 2012 to 2023, Annual Statutory Report for the Council of Governors for the period of 2022 to 2023. Report of the Office of the Controller of Budget on the County Government's Budget Implementation Review for the first 9 months of the financial year 2023-2024. The Annual Report of the Commission on Revenue Allocation and Financial Statements for financial year 2022-2023. Report of the Commission on Revenue Allocation on the On-Source Revenue Potential Tax Gap Study of County Governments. Report of the County Revenue Allocation Recommendations on the basis of equitable sharing of revenue between the national and county governments for the financial year 2024-2025. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay.
Now, Honorable Senators, before we proceed to the next order, I've got a further message to pass. I wish to report to the Senate that this morning, pursuant to Standing Order 46.3 and 4, I received the following message from the Speaker of the National Assembly regarding the passage by the National Assembly of the County Allocation of Revenue Bill, Senate Bills number 25 of 2024. Pursuant to the said standing orders, I now report the message. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 41.1 and 144 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the following message from the National Assembly. Whereas the County Allocation of Revenue Bill, Senate Bills number 25 of 2024, was passed by the Senate on Tuesday, 11th of June 2024, and referred to the National Assembly for consideration pursuant to the provisions of Article 110(4) of the Constitution, and whereas the National Assembly considered the said bill on Tuesday, the 25th of June 2024, and passed it without amendments, and in the form passed by the Senate. Now, therefore, in accordance with the provisions of Article 110 of the Constitution and Standing Orders 41.1 and 144 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the said decision of the National Assembly to the Senate. Honorable Senators, following the passage of this bill by the National Assembly, I am now in the process of transmitting the same to His Excellency, the President, for assent. I thank you. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to give notice of the following motion: the alteration of the Senate calendar for the third session, that notwithstanding the resolution of the Senate made on the 15th of February 2024 regarding the approval of the calendar of the Senate for the third session and pursuant to Standing Order number 32.4, the Senate resolves to alter its calendar to proceed on recess at the rise of the Senate on Wednesday 26th, 2024 morning sitting and resumes its sittings on Tuesday 16th of July 2024.
Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements. Order number 8, motion, approval of sittings of the Senate to be held in Busia County.
Majority Leader. Yeah, pursuant to the decision of the all right, maybe you proceed to give notice.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, which is approval of the sittings of the Senate to be held in Busia County, that aware that the Senate of Kenya is established under Article 93 of the Constitution, and its main role as set out on Article 96 is to represent, serve, and protect the interests of counties and their governments. Further aware of the critical role that the Senate plays in the interlinkage between national and county levels of government, and the need to enhance interaction between Senate and county governments as a means of bringing the Senate closer to counties and general public. Acknowledging the successes made during the sittings of the Senate outside Nairobi, held in Uasin Gishu, Kitui, and Turkana counties in 2018, 2019, and 2023 respectively, further acknowledging that the recommendation of the Senate Business Committee that a sitting of the Senate be held away from the traditional premises of Parliament, buildings Nairobi during the term of the 13th Parliament and the subsequent resolution of the Senate made on 8th of March 2023 to hold plenary and committee sittings in the counties for 1 week period within the month of September in every session of the 4th Senate, except during the election year, with the objective to promote the role and work of the Senate and enhance public awareness regarding the business of the Senate and Parliament in general, highlight existing and new opportunities for engagement in the legislative process, develop and strengthen partnerships at the county level of government, and provide an opportunity to members and staff of county assemblies to learn and share best practices with senators and parliamentary officers. Now, therefore, pursuant to Article 126(1) of the Constitution, the Senate resolves to hold its plenary sittings in Busia County from the 23rd to the 27th of September 2024.
Next order.
Order number 8, motion, approval of sittings of the Senate to be held in Busia County.
Majority Leader. I thought it's the other motion. No, we need to dispense with this because the Secretariat needs to start preparations. So if we defer this till we resume, there'll be no time to prepare to go to Busia. And it's something that should take us under 5 minutes.
Just on a point of order.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, when we met at the House Business, the main business of this session today was to adjourn the sitting because of what happened. I'm a bit perplexed to see that there are other motions being introduced, yet we discussed on the seriousness of the matters that happened yesterday. The history of this country was changed forever. So I would beseech you that these members are sitting here waiting to adjourn this House once the motion has been passed. So let us not try to introduce other matters. This issue of sitting in Busia can be dealt with at another time. You know, we don't need to discuss it now. With all due respect to the Secretariat, I want to request that we focus on what brought us here.
Honorable Ledama, you're a member of SBC, and if you look at the agenda that we were prosecuting at SBC, it included adoption of the supplementary order paper. If you look at the supplementary order paper that was adopted by SBC, it is exactly what we're prosecuting in plenary here. It included the motion for approval of the Senate to be held. Now, honorable senators, if you look at the alteration of the calendar, if we resolve, the chair is speaking, Minority Leader. If you look at the proposed alteration of calendar, we are coming back, we are resuming in August. Now, we are supposed to go to Busia in September. The Secretariat needs to prepare for the Senate to proceed for Senate Mashinani in Busia. The motion need not take more than 2 minutes. You know, the time we are arguing, we could have dispensed with this motion. Yes.
Bwana Spika, nafikiria tumekubaliana kabla hatujaingia hapa bunge, tukiwa katika ule mkutano wa SBC. Tumekubaliana kwamba ajenda itakayokuwa hapa itakuwa ya kuangalia jinsi ya vile tunaweza kuahirisha kikao hichi ili tuweze kupatiana nafasi.
Senator Mazayo, that is exactly what
ikiwa tutaanza kuingia katika maeneo mengine Bwana Spika, itaharibu hii mjadala.
Just take your seat. Just take your seat, please.
Tafadhali Bwana Spika, na kuomba ikiwa itawezekana sisi tuweze kujadiliana jambo moja tu peke yake ambalo tulikuwa tumekuja hapa kulifanya.
Just take your seat. Take your seat, please. You're also a member of SBC. And one over the agenda, have your seat, Mazayo. You know, you came late for SBC, let me give you what was discussed. Just have a seat, please. Have your seat, Senator Mazayo. When he sat in SBC, and the minutes are there, one of the agenda was to adopt the supplementary order paper, which was adopted by members of SBC, including you. The supplementary order paper is the order paper that is before plenary now, which included the motion. And this is a motion that should take 2 minutes. It's going to affect you when you come back. The Secretariat need to adequately prepare for your going to Busia. It is something that should take us a minute.
Bwana Spika, nimekubaliana na vile ulivyosema. Asante, nimekubaliana sana na vile ulivyosema. Lakini ingekuwa bora, cha kwanza tuanze na ile ambayo tumekubaliana, alafu sasa tuje kwa hii nyingine, ambayo itakuwa sawa kabisa. Hakuna shida.
So are you asking me to rearrange the sequence of the order paper?
Ndio hivyo. Asante sana Bwana Spika.
Very well. Clerk, proceed to call order number 9.
Order number 9, motion, alteration of the Senate calendar for the third session.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move the following motion, that notwithstanding the resolution of the Senate made on the 15th of February 2024 regarding the approval of the calendar of the Senate for the third session and pursuant to Standing Order number 32-4, the Senate resolves to alter its calendar to proceed on recess at the rise of the Senate on Wednesday, 26th of June 2024 morning sitting and resume its sitting on Tuesday, 16th, 2024. Mr. Speaker, yesterday was a difficult day for this country because of what happened, where on a normal day, when there were protests, and we expected that they'll be peaceful and people will go home as they have done previously, things took a turn for the worse, where there were incidences, Mr. Speaker, of breakdown of the rule of law. And therefore, in very difficult circumstances, members of this House had to be evacuated. Some of us were in Protection House, some were here, our members of staff. They had to find their ways out of Parliament in ways that they are not familiar. And in the ensuing battle, Mr. Speaker, lives were lost. I don't know the names or the identity of the people who lost their lives, but one is too many already, Mr. Speaker. And I don't know, and I don't intend to speak much on this topic because I'm still reflecting and thinking hard and long about perhaps what needs to happen in our country. Because we can say what we want, Mr. Speaker, but at the end of the day, it will be remembered that we were in leadership at this particular time. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, to provide for that opportunity to pause and to give us opportunity to perhaps, one, mourn the lives that were lost, two, sympathize with those that were injured, including police officers, because when I was walking out of Protection House, Bunge Towers going to Protection House, Mr. Speaker, I saw a police officer who was injured as well, trying to provide cover for the members that were crossing on by foot from the National Assembly side to Bunge Towers, and so many other people, and generally the country that is hurting and sick. Perhaps our collective wisdom as leaders is needed at this point, and there is opportunity for us to pause and reflect. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to take long because of the sensitivity of this matter and the heaviness with which we come before this House, looking at our staff, many of them who were equally affected in one way or the other, the members that are here, and the country at large, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I want to agree with the decision of SBC to request that we proceed on a recess until Tuesday, the 16th of July. It's about a 2 weeks break, Mr. Speaker, to provide time for the things that I have said. So with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to request the leader of minority who we consulted on this matter and agreed that perhaps it would be good to take a break from the business of the House. And he agreed to it, and therefore I want to request that that he seconds this motion, Mr. Speaker. With those very many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I invite the minority leader to second.
Asante Taiki Speaker. La kwanza ni kwamba nasimama kuunga mkono huu mswada wa kuahirisha vikao vya hili bunge letu la Senate na moyo mzito sana ya kwamba tunasimama hivi leo sisi tukiwa hapa hali ya kwamba tumepoteza ndugu zetu, watoto wetu, sio hali kwingine pengine katika Kenya ama mbali na maeneo ya bunge, lakini tumeweza kupoteza watoto wetu ndani ya bunge ama ndani ya maeneo ya bunge ambao waliweza kupigwa risasi. Bwana Spika, ni jambo la kusikitisha sana. Na nikisimama hapa ninajua kwamba kuna mama wengi sana katika Kenya hivi leo, ama ndugu zetu wa kike na wa kiume wa Kenya kwa ujumla wamepoteza ndugu zao, jamii zao kote katika Kenya. Hatujajua hesabu yake ni ngapi. Kwa hiyo katika shindikizo hili la kwamba nakubaliana na maahirisho ya vikao, ni kwamba tunataka tupate nafasi ama tuwapatie nafasi wale ambao watakuwa wachunguzi kuweza kujua ni nini ilitendeka, ni kina nani waliingia hapa na ni kina nani waliweza kuongoza, hususan kile kikosi ambacho cha polisi kiliingia hapa ndani ya maeneo ya bunge wakikimbizana ama wakifata wale waliokuwa wakiandamana. Na pia tunataka kujua ni kina nani wale waliweza kupiga risasi wakiwa ndani ya maeneo ya bunge wakiangusha Mkenya mwingine na risasi ili yeye aweze kuonekana ni jemadari. Bwana Spika, tunajua maeneo ya bunge ni maeneo ambayo hayatakikani, watu ambao hawatakikani kuingia ndani ya hili bunge. Ni maeneo ambayo yamechungwa sana. Lakini pia ikiwa maeneo yamechungwa sana, sio ya kwamba wewe unaweza kufyatua risasi na ukaua Mkenya. Kwa hiyo tunakubaliana kwamba tuahirishe, uchunguzi ufanywe ili tuweze kujua ni askari gani ama ni polisi gani aliweza kuchukua ile risasi, aliweza kuchukua ile bunduki yake na akaangalia Mkenya na akafyatua risasi. Kwa hiyo tunataka sisi kama tunaahirisha kwa sababu ambazo za muafaka. Bwana Spika, jambo lingine ambalo tunataka kujua ni kwamba ilikuwaje hawa askari ambao walikuwa pale mbele ya majengo ya bunge kuweza kukubaliana ama kuweza kuachilia, ama ilikuwa ni makusudi kuwatega wale walikuwa wanafanya maandamano, kufungua mlango na kuwaacha wakaingia ndani. Tunataka kujua wale maaskari waliokuwa pale walikuwa na jukumu lao la kufanya ili kuweza kukinga wale watu walikuwa wakifanya maandamano, ama wale wa Kenya ambao hususan wanajulikana kama Gen Z. Tunaelewa ya kwamba sisi kama wabunge tuko hapa na hili ni maeneo ambayo yanaingia watu wa nje. Watu wa nje wakiingia wanaingia na ruhusa ya hapa. Ili kuwaje tuliona malori ya polisi ambayo yalikuwa yamekinga ili watu wasiweze kuingia. Ili kuwaje waliruhusiwa na mlango ukafunguliwa na wakaingia ndani. Hilo ni jambo moja ambalo tunaweza kusema la kwamba tunataka uchunguzi ufanywe, na ndio sababu tunapeana nafasi hii. Yale yanayosema ya kwamba kulikuwa na sijui bunge liliweza kuingiliwa likaharibiwa, hiyo ni maeneo mengine, ama maeneo ya kula chakula, ama maeneo haya mengine walikuja wakaangusha hizi bendera zetu, lakini hawa walikuwa ni wa Kenya. Lakini tunasema tu ya kwamba katika maeneo hayo ambayo tumesema kama ni mambo ya chakula, sisi hatuji hapa kwa kula chakula. Tunakuja hapa ili tuweze kujadiliana, kuangalia ni mbinu gani tunaweza kusaidia Wakenya. Kwa hiyo Bwana Spika, mstahiki Spika, nasema ya kwamba wale walioweza kuingia na pengine wakaenda maeneo wakaharibu, wanajulikana. Kwa hiyo tunataka uchunguzi ufanywe ili tuweze kujua ni kina nani wale waliingia katika maeneo haya na kuweza kuharibu ama kuweza kufanya vitendo ambavyo havifai, na sisi tunasema ni sawa, tunaweza kuahirisha, tuwapatie nafasi ili waweze kufanya uchunguzi wao. Kwa hayo mengi machache Bwana Spika.
A point of order, Senator.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I join majority, Mr. Speaker.
What is so out of order with your minority leader?
That's what I want to draw to your attention, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've listened to the motion that has been moved by a majority leader and seconded by a minority leader that is seeking that this House adjourns to July. And Mr. Speaker, I know that yesterday the National Assembly passed the finance bill, and we know that our budget runs within very strict timelines. Now, Mr. Speaker, today I want to speak as a patriotic Kenyan. I want also to speak as a lawyer. And I want to speak as a person whose conscience has been pricked by what has happened in the last couple of days, Mr. Speaker. I'm also speaking, Mr. Speaker, regretting that for the first time ever since this country got its independence, the House of Parliament was invaded by people who are demonstrating. Mr. Speaker, it's a big indictment on us as a House of Parliament. and a big indictment on us as
Senator
leaders.
Chute,
I'm on a
Senator
point of
Chute,
order.
Senator Mogeni is on a point of order. Now, Senator
No, Mr.
Mogeni,
Speaker, Mr. Speaker.
what is Senator Mogeni?
Yes, the point I'm raising, Mr. Speaker, I want to get direction from the chair, Mr. Speaker.
No.
Or
You
whether-
rose on a point of order,
Yes,
indicating that Senator Mazayo is conducting disorderly.
Yes,
That's why you
the
rose on a
direction
point of
I'm
order.
seeking, Mr. Speaker. You know,
So
it's
let Senator Mazayo conclude, then you seek that intervention, which I will
you know,
rule
before,
on.
if we lose this chance, Mr. Speaker, you'll not
No,
be
no.
able to.
Senator Mogeni, we're a house of rules. If
You know, Mr.
let
Speaker,
Senator Mazayo conclude, and then I'll give you a chance.
you know,
for-
you have
for
not
your
even had
intervention.
my point of order.
Because one, you're not even stating under what point of order, under
I'm
what standing
actually,
order. you are.
I'm standing on standing order number 1, Mr. Speaker.
That cannot relate
Because-
to Senator Mazayo.
Why
It is
not?
Senator Mazayo who was on his feet. What is so disorderly?
What
with
is,
him?
what is disorderly, Mr. Speaker, is that you are allowing majority and minority to move that this house adjourns.
So are you saying the
And-
chair
and-
is disorderly?
It's not a matter of being disorderly. The majority,
You rose on a point of
the
order.
majority and minority are the ones who are out
You know
of
the
order.
purpose of a point of order?
Yes.
The purpose of a point of order is to call a senator who is speaking to order because they're behaving disorderly. If it's an intervention, Senator Mogeni, I'll give you an opportunity. Let Senator Mazayo conclude, and then I'll give you that opportunity.
You know, Mr. Speaker, the problem that is ailing this country is that we never want to speak truthfully, and we don't want to confront
I will
issues.
give you an opportunity to speak truthfully after Senator Mazayo has concluded. Because I've just listened to you, and clearly Senator Mazayo was not out of order. Because one, you're not indicating the standing order he's breached. So just have a seat. I'll give you an opportunity to ventilate your point. It will never be lost. I always celebrate your wisdom, Senator Mogeni. Conclude, Senator Mazayo.
Kwa kumaliza, asante bwana mstahiki Spika, na pia nafikiria ndugu yangu wako na pointi nzuri, atapewa wakati wake wa kuweza kujieleza. Na mimi nasema ya kwamba nakubaliana kwamba tuahirishe hiki kikao ama vikao mpaka hiyo tarehe 15 Julai ambayo tutaweza kukutana tena. Naunga mkono vikao viahirishwe. Asante sana Bwana Spika.
Senator Chute. Oh. Senator Amida, take your seat. Honorable Senators, I'll now proceed to propose a question, which is that notwithstanding the resolution of the Senate made on the 15th of February 2024 regarding the approval of the calendar of the Senate for the third session, and pursuant to Standing Order 32-4, the Senate resolved to alter its calendar to proceed on recess at the rise of the Senate on Wednesday, 26 June 2024, morning sitting, and resume its sitting on Tuesday, 16 July 2024. Senator Chute.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa.
Honorable Senators, because some cards, some of you don't have your cards. For those who can access the dashboard, please press. For those who cannot, just show by raising your hand. No shouting.
Asante.
You just need to raise up your hand, and I'll be able to locate you. You don't have to shout. Proceed.
Asante sana.
Yes, you rise and keep them in the air till I tell you to drop.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Mimi nasimama kuunga mkono mjadala hii, na pia ningetaka kuchukua nafasi hii Mheshimiwa Spika kutuma pole zangu kwa wale watu vijana wameuawa jana na wale wako kwa hospitali saa hii kwa kuumizwa katika ile mpango ya hawa kudemonstrate.
Mheshimiwa Spika, jana mimi na senator wa Pokot, nafikiri Pokot West, na wajumbe 6 kutoka National Assembly tuliingia kwa ambulance kutoka bunge. Mheshimiwa Spika, tulipatikana na vijana wamesimamisha ambulance, sisi tukiwa kwa hiyo ambulance. Mheshimiwa Spika, hiyo ambulance imenyoroshwa na mawe mbele, nyuma, katikati, kila mahali. Mheshimiwa Spika, ningependa kuchukua nafasi hii. Leo ungesikia vifo ya wabunge 8 ingetokea jana. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mungu alikuwa na sisi akatuokoa, na kuna askari walipiga tear gas hapo, ndio tulipata nafasi ya kutoka kwa hiyo ambulance. Nataka kurudisha shukrani kubwa sana kwa askari ambaye waliokoa maisha ya hawa viongozi tulikuwa nao na mimi pia. Mheshimiwa Spika, nikiongea juu ya mambo ya bills imepitishwa. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna shida ndani ya nchi hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, ninashukuru sana kuona kweli president wetu anataka tax ilipwe, na kuna vitu zingine kama sanitary towels. Ukiangalia Mheshimiwa Spika, sanitary towels ambazo inatengenezwa hapa, kitu ya kwanza ingefaa kuangaliwa ni kama inatosha kuuzika ndani ya miji Kenya hii mzima. Mheshimiwa Spika, mambo ya pili, bei ya sanitary towels locals, ile bei ya inchi iko juu bado. Kuna vitu nyingi sana Mheshimiwa Spika ingefaa kuangaliwa. Mheshimiwa Spika, mambo muhimu sana ambaye ningetaka leo Kenyans wajue ni hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, kama drum mitungi ya maji imetoboka chini, Mheshimiwa Spika, na unataka kuweka maji, ile kitu ya kwanza ungefaa kufanya Mheshimiwa Spika ni kuziba hiyo ufa kwanza, hiyo shimo izibwe ndio uanze kuweka maji. Saa hii vile hii sheria imepitishwa ni kama unaweka maji, drum imetoboka chini. Unaona watu wanatembea na helikopta, wanatembea na pesa harambee, wanatoa billions na billions. Unaona wengine wanaenda nje, wanaenda Rwanda, wanaenda Kampala, wanaenda sijui wapi matembezi. Mimi nimeshindwa nchi hii, pesa ile watu wanakula. Ukienda counties 50% inakuliwa. Ukienda national government 30% inakuliwa. Ningetaka kuuliza Mheshimiwa Rais awache kuongeza tax kwanza. Kwanza apunguze hii ukora ambaye inafanyika ndani ya nchi hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, ukiangalia saa hii national government 30% inakuliwa na wakora. Ukienda kwa counties 50% wakora. Ukiangalia Mheshimiwa Spika, tulipitisha 400 billion. Out of 400 billion, ukitoa 50%, 200 billion imekuliwa huko. 3 trillion, ukitoa 30%, 900 billion imeenda. Mheshimiwa Spika, ile juhudi president anafanya kujaribu nchi hii ilipe madeni, anafanya usiku na mchana, hakikishe deni inalipwa na watu wanakaa vizuri, shule inaendelea vizuri, lakini hiyo kazi yote wakora ndio wanaharibu. Mheshimiwa Spika, nikisupport adjournment, nataka kusema hivi. Serikali ya Kenya, kuna iko risasi ingine, zamani tumesikia hata tukiwa wadogo, inawekwa raba, inaitwa rubber bullets. Serikali hawezi kutumia hiyo kupiga hawa watoto. Kwa nini anatumia risasi ile ya kuua watu? Mheshimiwa Spika, hivi vijana wamekufa jana. Mimi sijasikia mtu akisema pole. Hata president ya nchi hajasema pole. Angefaa kuanza na kusema pole, tumepoteza watoto kama hiyo, na hiyo watoto wangefaa kukufa na watoto wengine wasikufe. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, ya mwisho, jana sisi tukikuwa kwa ambulance tukijaribu kutoroka, kuna wengine walibebwa na helikopta kutoka KICC wakienda kutaramushwa kwao nyumbani. Hata spika wetu mwenyewe hali yake ilikuwa hatarini, nikaenda kuangalia spika mwenyewe uko sawa, ndio. Wengine saa hiyo helikopta wanabebwa naye. Nani amechukua hiyo watu na helikopta? Kama sasa jana sisi tungekufa, wale walikula pesa wanachukuliwa na helikopta, wale kama sisi tunapigwa risasi ndani ya nini na mawe. Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka kushukuru ile maaskari walibeba spika yetu akapelekwa salama. Hiyo maaskari nashukuru hao sana. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, tukienda kwa hii recess, ningetaka mandugu zetu wale wanakula na sisi wale tunaangalia hao wakikula, wafikirie sisi tunaangalia nyinyi mnakula. Sisi hatuna njaa hiyo, watu wetu hawana njaa. Kwa hivyo mfikirie, mkirudi hapa kwa bunge mtuambie hiyo mambo ya corruption itapunguzwa ama haitapunguzwa. Kama corruption haitapunguzwa, kama president wetu hawezi kuongelea corruption. Mheshimiwa Spika, juzi tukiwa State House nilikatazwa kuongea. Na nilikuwa nataka kuuliza hii pesa inalipwa kama hamjasimamisha hiyo corruption, hii pesa inalipwa, sio watu tu ndio watakula. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, tukienda likizo yetu, tunataka kuenda nyumbani, kwa sababu watu wameona kwa television nikipigwa na mawe, watu wote wanapiga simu wanasema uko hai, kwa nini watu wengine walibebwa na helikopta wewe uliingia ndani ya ambulance? Kwa hivyo nataka rudi nyumbani niambie watu yangu tuko salama na waendelee kukaa salama, na ningeomba kiwezekana tukirudi hapa kabla tujatoka hapa tupitishe hiyo mambo ya kuenda Busia. Tafadhalini sana. Ndio wawe na nafasi, secretariat pia wafanye kazi yao, na tukirudi hapa turudi tukiwa mandugu na marafiki. Asanteni sana. Nimeshukuru sana Bwana Spika.
Senator Mogeni. Senator Mogeni.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I first of all want to join my colleagues in passing my message of condolences to Kenyans who yesterday lost their lives and those who were maimed, Mr. Speaker, during yesterday's demonstrations. Mr. Speaker, yesterday was unprecedented. We witnessed an invasion of Parliament, and I want to thank the Almighty God that He saved my friend Senator Chute. When I was watching the news, I didn't know that the person who survived that ordeal was Senator Chute. We thank the Almighty God for you, Mr. Speaker, and that is a stern reminder that if we are not resonating with the people we represent, nobody is safe in this country. Mr. Speaker, I want to stand by differing with the majority leader and minority, and by opposing the motion that is on the floor to adjourn the House. Mr. Speaker, if you are an elected leader at this point in time, the people you represent are looking up to us to provide solutions, Mr. Speaker. I am sure that the people of the great county of Nyamira, Mr. Speaker, want to see what solutions can we offer as a house to the issues that have been brought to the table by Generation Z. Is it Generation Z? By the young people. By adjourning this House, Mr. Speaker, we are running away from confronting the challenges and the problems that are facing us as a country, Mr. Speaker. If you adjourn this House and I retreat to the village, how am I going to address the issues that are on the table, Mr. Speaker? This is a time, Mr. Speaker, that we need as a House to have a bipartisan approach on how we resolve the issues that are facing us as a country, Mr. Speaker. If as has been put by Senator Chute, the young people are indicting this House that we have failed even on addressing issues of corruption, Mr. Speaker, issues of excesses by those who are in leadership. How is adjourning this House going to give hope and confidence to our youth, Mr. Speaker? And Mr. Speaker, the first issue I want to raise, Mr. Speaker, is that for many years, Mr. Speaker, this House has witnessed the mutilation of the 2010 Constitution on passage of legislations, Mr. Speaker. I've had the benefit, Mr. Speaker, of going through the Finance Bill 2024, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, our Constitution is very clear, Mr. Speaker, that if we have any legislation that touches on functions of counties, such a legislation, Mr. Speaker, must be considered by the National Assembly and by the Senate. And Mr. Speaker, Article 110 of the Constitution defines bills concerning county governments. Article 110(1)(a) says, a bill concerning, in this Constitution, a bill concerning county government means a bill containing provisions affecting the functions and powers of county governments. And Mr. Speaker, Article 110(3) states that before either House considers a bill, the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Speaker of the Senate shall jointly resolve any question as to whether it is a bill concerning counties and whether it's a special or ordinary bill. Mr. Speaker, I've read the Finance Bill 2024. If you read the memorandum to that bill at page 599, Mr. Speaker, the bill proposes, and I want to read, the bill proposes to amend pieces of legislation relating to fees, levies, management of public funds. But what is more important, Mr. Speaker, to this House is that that particular bill proposes to amend the Affordable Housing Act, more so Section 54. Mr. Speaker, if you go to the answer, it doesn't matter. The thing is that that was a provision that was in the bill. We have a chance to make comments on it, Mr. Speaker. That's the point. That Section 54 was introduced to the Affordable Housing Act by amendment that was introduced by this House, the Senate. It was sent to the National Assembly, and the National Assembly concurred. And that Section 54 was enacted into the the Affordable Housing Act, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, the Finance Bill of 2024 has purported to amend that particular section of the Affordable Housing Act by proposing a deletion without the involvement of the Senate, Mr. Speaker. That is trying to introduce an amendment to that piece of legislation through the back door. The second one, Mr. Speaker, is proposals to amend the Data Protection Act. And Mr. Speaker, you know, it's on record that that piece of legislation was also considered by the Senate. Again, those amendments have been proposed as part of the Finance Bill 2024. The third one, Mr. Speaker, is an amendment to the Public Finance Management Act, a piece of legislation that serves both national government and county government, Mr. Speaker. The question I'm posing to us this morning, as leaders who have seen what has happened around, did our Speaker, the Honorable Speaker of the Senate, participate in concurrence with the Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker? Because if we sit here today, Mr. Speaker, and tomorrow we see this bill being assented to by the President without the involvement of the Senate, what we are telling Kenyans is that the culture of impunity that triggered demonstrations, that triggered the storming of Parliament, will continue being entrenched, Mr. Speaker. And if that is the case, Mr. Speaker, we are not addressing the issues that are facing this country, Mr. Speaker. What prevents us, Mr. Speaker, from demanding that before the president assents to the finance bill, Mr. Speaker, and it's the finance bill that has triggered the challenges that we are facing as a country. Why can't we demand as a Senate that that bill be brought to us before it's assented by the president, Mr. Speaker? And Mr. Speaker, I want to draw the attention of the House that there is nothing in this Constitution that stops this House from considering the finance bill as long as it has provisions that affect functions of county governments. The Constitution only has a restriction on the originating house when it comes to money bills. It says money bills may originate from the National Assembly, but it does not say that they will not be considered by the Senate, Mr. Speaker. So if the government chose, Mr. Speaker, to introduce bills that touch on functions of counties in the finance bill, then the best that we should do as a House is to demand that that bill comes to the Senate for consideration before it's assented to by the President. Number two, Mr. Speaker, as we adjourn, I condemn and don't support destruction of property, Mr. Speaker. But I equally, Mr. Speaker, denounce the use of live bullets by our police officers on demonstrators. If you watched CNN this morning, Mr. Speaker, Kenya was accorded, I tried to take the minutes, we were accorded repeatedly in the news, more than an hour this morning. And the focus was that the Kenyan police used live bullets to kill innocent, unarmed demonstrators within the precincts of Parliament, not at Moi Avenue, not on University Way, but within the precincts of Parliament. I understand it's wrong, Mr. Speaker, to invade the institution of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, but do we support, as a House, Mr. Speaker, the use of live bullets on demonstrators, Mr. Speaker? Senator Chuta has told us this morning that we all know there is something we call rubber bullets. We know it. There are those rungus, I don't know how we call them in English, that can be used to quell demonstrations. But, Mr. Speaker, should we, as a country, independent country, 62 years after regaining our independence, open live bullets on demonstrators? What is the difference between Kenya today and the apartheid South Africa? What is the difference? When we watched Sarafina movie shot in South Africa, where the police, during apartheid, were opening fire on blacks in South Africa fighting for the independence of that country, and what we witnessed yesterday. What is the difference, Mr. Speaker? When these pictures are being shown in CNN, Mr. Speaker, what picture are we portraying for our nation? What picture are we portraying, Mr. Speaker? I witnessed during the unfortunate incidents, which again I don't support, that happened in Washington when Trump led demonstrators to invade Congress. Nobody approved. I don't approve it up to today. It was a wrong thing to do. But there was restraint from the police force in the US. There was restraint from the police in the US. Nobody was shot dead. In fact, the person who lost his life instead was a police officer who, in extreme restraint, sustained injuries that were fatal. But in this country, Mr. Speaker, yesterday, we opened fire on young people. The statistics have it that we lost 5 lives, but it could be more, Mr. Speaker. So we as a House, instead of adjourning, Mr. Speaker, we need to know who was in command of those police officers? Can you imagine if Honorable Chute here, can you imagine if those youths also turned on him and killed him yesterday? What could have happened, Mr. Speaker? Because, Mr. Speaker, this constitution in chapter 14 has standards that should be applied by our police force, Mr. Speaker. And we have structures, Mr. Speaker. Under Article 145, there is only one Kenyan who should give us answers, the Inspector General of Police. He's the one who has commanding authority over the National Police Service, Mr. Speaker. Worse still, Mr. Speaker, we have the National Security Council that has supervisory powers over all the security organs, the Defense Forces, the NSIS, the National Police Service, Mr. Speaker. And that council, Mr. Speaker, the National Security Council under Article 240, is chaired by none other than the President of the Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. Is he approving those kind of murdering of our youths by police force, Mr. Speaker? And we know, Mr. Speaker, that the UN Assembly of State Parties in 1979 passed a code of conduct for security organs in all countries that are members of the UN, Mr. Speaker. And when you are dealing with a demonstration, Mr. Speaker, you are not allowed to use live bullets unless the demonstrators themselves are using equal force. If you see people coming to Parliament opening fire on the police officers, that can be excused. But you're dealing with people who are invoking their right under Article 37. If they have invaded Parliament, we can invoke our laws, have them arrested, charged, taken to court. You listened yesterday, Mr. Speaker. Our Chief Justice issued a statement. That's unprecedented. And he urged our security organs. He told them the courts will open beyond 6 p.m. Arrest anybody who's breaking the law and bring them to us. He didn't tell them that open fire and kill. No. So, Mr. Speaker, what happened yesterday should be condemned, Mr. Speaker. We want a country that respects the rule of law. If there are people who have broken the law, let them be arrested, be taken to courts of law, charged, tried, and if they are found guilty, they should be jailed, but not to kill demonstrators using live bullets. So I oppose this motion, Mr. Speaker, because we have serious issues that we need to prosecute and deal with now, not in July. That is what is expected of us as the people's representative, Mr. Speaker. So I oppose, I'm sorry to differ with Majority Leader and also differ with Minority Leader, that we cannot adjourn while the country is burning. Parliament can sit even during wartime, Mr. Speaker. But if we adjourn and run away, then we are cowards. This is not a house of cowards, Mr. Speaker. We have distinguished leaders here. Let us know what are the problems facing us at this hour, at this time in our history. What are the solutions? How do we deal with them? If you adjourn today and you see the youths again demonstrating on Monday, are you going to deal with these issues from Nandi or from Marsabit? No. You deal with the issues from here on this floor, Mr. Speaker. So I oppose this motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chirange.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From the onset, I want to empathize and sympathize with many Kenyans and police officers who have lost their lives over anarchy that we witnessed yesterday in the Republic of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I'm also happy that most of our colleagues, including yourself, escape unearthed. So, Speaker, extra times needs extra measures. While we agree, Mr. Speaker, that the conversation that started in good faith and with serious concerns is very valid. Mr. Speaker, we would not want to lose our country to people who want to take advantage of the situation that we are in as a country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let us remain focused. What happened yesterday at Parliament was unfortunate. It should never have happened. It should not have happened, Mr. Speaker. I remember one of my colleagues a few weeks ago, we didn't question the security systems within Parliament, and it is good the Commissioner of PSC is here, Senator Okongo Omugeni. Through you, Mr. Speaker, I wish Senator Okongo Omugeni would be listening. When we questioned, Mr. Speaker, even at the opening of the Bunge Towers, we were told there are 3 layers of security within Bunge Square. But yesterday, people had to run through ambulances, Mr. Speaker. People had to sleep in ambulances like cops, Mr. Speaker, which was very unfortunate. But when we questioned the security of Parliament the last 3 weeks ago or 1 month, we were being told we were being populist. Some of us were being threatened to be taken to powers and privileges for speaking out. And I said on this floor of the House, Mr. Speaker, that if we cannot speak for ourselves, who will speak for us? Yesterday, the people came, invaded, Mr. Speaker, the Parliament, which has never happened in the history of this republic. So, Speaker, I shudder to think that if those young men and women would have accessed Parliament when we are in session, Mr. Speaker, they would not care who you are. I saw some of my colleagues, respectively from the minority, trying to escape through the bypass. And I don't want to name names, Mr. Speaker. They were calling them enemies, and they were people of the minority side who have even voted no for the finance bill. Mr. Speaker, I want to assure the country, and as leaders, we must come together. Despite our political affiliation, despite our thinking, it will not matter whether you are on the minority and majority. When the Gen Zs come for us, they will not care how you spoke or the affiliation that you have. They will only care with one thing. What have you done for this country, Mr. Speaker? What have you said? And I agree, it is the time to fight impunity, to fight corruption, Mr. Speaker. And anybody who has taken public money, Mr. Speaker, anybody who has shown arrogance and impunity, Mr. Speaker, including even counties, and I want to challenge governors, they might feel that they are safe. In fact, from the sources, allegations I'm hearing, the next stop is county governments, Mr. Speaker, and county institutions, because Kenyans are tired. They want to have a country. And I'm happy for the first time, as a country, we're having a conversation by the people, and for the people, for the sake of the betterment of the future of this republic, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thirdly, Mr. Speaker, I tend to disagree with the majority and minority leader. Even in terms of war, in Iraq, in Israel, and everywhere across the world, there is no way Parliament has run away from responsibility. Mr. Speaker, respectfully, while I agree there could be persuasive reasons, if we run away when our leadership is needed more than ever, who will provide leadership from Nyamira? Bishop, who will provide leadership when we are all a coward and being in our underbeds? Somewhere in Nyamira, somewhere in Narok, Mr. Speaker, somewhere in Kapsabet, Mr. Speaker. This is the right time we should be sitting as Parliament and be part of the conversation on what the young people are raising. If they need imagine if young people tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, said in their proposal, we need policy and legislative intervention. Where will we be? We will be somewhere taking care of cows in Narok, or somewhere in Luanda where the market is in disarray, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let us avoid this being emotional. I know there is wisdom on adjournment. But, Mr. Speaker, since the chamber is somehow functional, and I've seen, on a lighter note, Mr. Speaker, some of us have been having reservations of food. I saw the Gen Z saying the chef of Bunge should look at the recipe. They are putting too much pili-pili. But, Mr. Speaker, even the functionality of our hospitality sources around are still functional up to 80%. Even, and I know although our staff also were affected, and we are with them in prayers and in thoughts. I know some of them were attacked in their offices, but we are praying with them through the clerk. But we are happy that they can get that courage. This is when leadership is needed. Mr. Speaker, if everybody closes, imagine judiciary today adjourns for 1 month, and you have had the Chief Justice saying we can even do extra hours in case there are people being brought to court. Judiciary has even said, let us sit beyond normal times. Mr. Speaker, executive is working beyond the normal time. Now Parliament, where we are the representatives of the people, Senator Ledama, where we are the representative of the people, are now going home to hide. And you know, it is unfair for the country. When the judiciary provides leadership, the executive provides, as Parliament, where we are the people represented, we should even be sitting beyond times to burn the midnight oil, Mr. Speaker, and be part of the people who will resolve the crisis, Mr. Speaker. I think we need to be serious, Mr. Speaker. I know there were, and I want to appeal, you know, under Article 37, every person has a right to demonstrate. But we want also to ask the people who demonstrate also to do it peacefully and within the confines of the rule of law. And also, we want to ask the security agencies within the country to also have proper intelligence. And this calls to question the role of National Intelligence Service, Mr. Speaker. If the new Parliament would be under siege, the number of police and the organization of security structure, including the barricade and many others, Mr. Speaker, they should have ensured that they would have planned properly, Mr. Speaker, so that we would not have witnessed situations where Parliament would be invaded, where it would be disregarded, Mr. Speaker. In some democracies, it shows that we have lost legitimacy of the people, Mr. Speaker, despite that we were elected. Therefore, the security apparatus within the country should also be on lookout. While we empathize and sympathize with the police, Mr. Speaker, I've seen a police officer who lost their hands the other day, admitted. And we empathize and one has lost a life the other day, I think yesterday night in Kotorai. A number have been injured across the country. While we empathize and sympathize with the police, we ask the police command also and security agencies to be well organized so that in future, even if criminals want to infiltrate, Mr. Speaker, in these peaceful demonstrations, they can be isolated and dealt with. Let the criminals be dealt with as per the law and within the law, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I really want to plead as a country and as a Parliament. This is the moment we need to provide leadership. I am told, Mr. Speaker, as Winston Churchill said, the person who matters is the person in the ring that has sweat and blood in trying and resolving crisis, Mr. Speaker. When in crisis, this is when leaders are made. This is when leadership is shown. Senate Minority Leader, it is not okay for us to adjourn and go home and go and do our things and watch things through social media, through TikTok, through Viusasa, or any other media outlets, Mr. Speaker. It is us as a Senate, Mr. Speaker, I expected today in the morning to be sitting as a Senate. How do we become part of the solution to this process, that the challenges that we are facing as a country, Mr. Speaker? And I'm happy that you have found time, Mr. Speaker, to be here, despite the challenges that we saw yesterday, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, no, but that was the only way. It was a security arrangement using ambulance, Mr. Speaker. But we are happy you are safe. Other people who use ambulance, like Senator Jute, did not succeed. Their efforts were thwarted by well-organized, Mr. Speaker. And Senator Jute, in future, I was advising him, he should get a Red Cross ambulance and get the flag. You know, those ones under the law, they cannot be stopped, and even demonstrators understand. And that is my advice to Senator Jute. Finally, Mr. Speaker, this is the right time as a country to engage into the going future. We should stop name calling. We should call for peace. We should resolve, Mr. Speaker, and ensure we remain steady focused. This country belongs to all of us, Mr. Speaker. When the country goes down, it does not matter whether you are seated on minority or majority. As a country, we must come together and resolve going into the future. With those very many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I oppose 101% against the adjournment motion. Let Parliament sit and provide leadership to the country and assist in moving the country forward. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker.
Senator Ledama, then Senator Kathy for gender.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion that the Senate of the Republic of Kenya should adjourn. And in fact, I'm just nearly coming short of saying this House and government should be dissolved because we have failed and we are cowards. Let us not lie that we are not cowards. Mr. Speaker, what is leading this country right now are citizens' assemblies. Recently, there was a citizen assembly through the space of Twitter or X. It brought about over 1.2 million people to listen. This country, Mr. Speaker, is going through a crisis that is unheard of. This is a crisis. It is a fire that has been lit up by the IMF, and we know very well that IMF does not put out fires in countries, it lights them. Mr. Speaker, the only thing that makes sense today is for us to be with our citizens and try to demystify what is happening in this country. Mr. Speaker, my colleague has spoken here, Senator Omogeni, and he has pointed out the lack of respect to the rule of law by this parliament, because the National Assembly is part of this House, where the National Assembly is amending 3 pieces of legislation that are supposed to be considered by both houses, and nobody gives a hoot in hell about the consequences. This House sat, amended the Housing Act, proposed, by then it was a housing bill, and made sure that what was being put out there, that we are building houses for the poor, those houses cannot be sold. Now, through a miscellaneous amendment, or through the Finance Act, or the Finance Bill, the National Assembly comes in and removes that because you don't care. Mr. Speaker, some of us are being bashed outside. I am personally being bashed outside because of miscommunication. Mr. Speaker, there was a conflict of interest bill which was brought into this House. That conflict of interest bill, my colleague and I, Senator Omogeni, sat down and looked at all the provisions that were being proposed in that conflict of interest bill, which was sponsored by the IMF and a corrupt Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission of this country. Because, Mr. Speaker, there is nobody which is corrupt more than ESCC. ESCC now wanted to be put in as the body that goes out there and look for conflict of interest instead of the body that goes out there and fight corruption. Mr. Speaker, very shortly, the conflict of interest bill was prepared. It was tabled on the National Assembly by the majority leader, Kimani Ichung'wah. And in that conflict of interest bill, it was proposing to amend the following acts which exist: the Leadership and Integrity Act, Ethics and Anti-Corruption Act, Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act. And Mr. Speaker, as part of those provisions that we amended in this House, and 80% of those amendments were actually brought by my colleague. He was attending court in Narok on that day, so I read on his behalf. The one which was really vexing, Mr. Speaker, and it is important that people know out there before they just come out and shout, was in the definition of a relative. And I want to read what the definition of a relative was. Mr. Speaker, before I even read what the definition of a relative was, that bill, which was being brought here, was being rushed hurriedly. The only thing we could not do was actually to reject that bill. And I now stand corrected. We should have actually rejected it in the first place. Mr. Speaker, the definition of a relative, and it is important that we read, was that it means a person who is related to a public officer by birth, marriage, common law, partnership, adoption, or affinity, and includes a public officer's father, mother, son, daughter, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, great great aunt, great uncle, first cousin, nephew, niece, husband, father-in-law, mother-in-law, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, stepson, stepdaughter, stepbrother, stepsister, half-brother, half-sister, or who is the grandfather or who is the grandmother of the spouse or of the public officer. Mr. Speaker, why on earth should a relative of mine be punished because the citizen of this republic saw fit to put me in this house? A step sister-in-law should not be allowed to do business with the government just because Ledamo Lekena has been elected in this house. That is ludicrous, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, when you think about it, and it is important that people read, because right now the anti-corruption is sponsoring articles in dailies to say we are being pushed out. And we know, Mr. Speaker, that the anti-corruption is the most corrupt body in this country. Most corrupt body in this country. Governors are swimming in wealth. They are buying properties. Cabinet secretaries are making billions, Mr. Speaker, on a monthly basis by taking bribes simply on issuing licenses. You issue a license and you are told, pay X amount of money. Mr. Speaker, let us call a spade a spade. We have failed as this country. Mr. Speaker, 3 a.m. in the morning, I couldn't sleep. I was asking myself, how powerful can a person be such that over 200 members of parliament who are elected by people to come and represent them cannot reason. They cannot use their medulla oblongata. They just go in as like sheep. They follow. They cannot ask, what are the consequences? What are the unintended consequences? Mr. Speaker, what am I going to be doing in this house? Today, I am mourning a young man from Narok County who was shot outside this parliament. This young man, I'll just remember his name, is from a family of the Shieni in Lolonga. I want to go and mourn with him. I want to go and listen. In fact, what we should do, Mr. Speaker, is that if we care about this country, we should be joining the Gen Zs on the streets and fighting for their rights. We should be joining the Gen Zs because we have failed. You know? But people don't care. We just want to line our own pockets. We just want to appear as if we are important. We are not important. Those people are the ones who have made us important, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, history has great men and women who non-violently walked across. Gandhi and his supporters worked for 240 days until they won. Mr. Speaker, in the US, Martin Luther King, the great march, they walked, and today we can see results. What stops us from doing that? We sit here and we lie to ourselves that we can be able to make a difference. Yet, nowadays we worship our party leaders, we worship the party line, we cannot remember that the people are the ones who have brought us here. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to plead with my colleagues that it is time that we join the citizen assemblies. It is time that we ask ourselves whether we really understand the phrase that power is transient. We are acting as if we will be in these seats forever, for the rest of our lives. What happened yesterday, Mr. Speaker, sir, should be a wake-up call to the citizens of this country. We should all remember that we are here for a very short time. You know, what shocks me, Mr. Speaker, is that what is this thing that really pushes the president so much when blood is pouring out there to want this bill to be passed? You know, what is it? Instead of us saying, and thank you, Senator Chute, for asking a very good question that all of us are asking. Instead of us fighting corruption, going after corrupt cabinet secretaries, going after corrupt governors, we are here trying to overtax citizens. Mr. Speaker, the population of this country, 70% are Gen Zs. I'm a Gen X. I should be joining them, and I want to join them to be able to go out there and fight for these rights. Because we don't care, Mr. Speaker. We don't care. We're just busy lining our own pockets. It is sad, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to correct out there. I proposed amendments to the Conflict of Interest Bill because it was barring the whole clan, the whole citizens of Kenya, from doing business with the government. It was amending legislation which already provide that. It was being engineered by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission so that they can find many loopholes of getting money. In Masai, we say, emala. You know, you have that gourd. Then you decide to open that gourd and the insects goes in when there are so many other avenues. We can easily do the right thing. This parliament can be able to check whether there is any conflict of interest. But we should not punish every other citizen. A step sister-in-law from doing business with the government. Yet, maybe they are doing business with government before I come. So, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, the family of a young man, Erica Yunishini, my prayers are with you. The family of all the departed Gen Zs, your life will not go out in vain. Mr. Speaker, the statements which are being propelled out there to feed certain interests are further from the truth. These men and women yesterday, young men and women, were marching in the street to fight for their rights. Unarmed, Mr. Speaker. It is hard out there. So I want to beseech you, my colleagues here. This house is supposed to be a house of union. This house is supposed to be a house that brings sanity. Right now, even if we sit here and burn the midnight oil, there's nothing we can be able to do. Because we are being spoken to there, it gets into the left ear, and it pops out of the right ear. Maybe sometimes because we are enticed. Mr. Speaker, I plead with my colleagues here that right now, every one of us seated here should search deeply within his soul. Search deeply. Why are you seated where you are, Senator Lilekwe? Why are you seated where you are, Mofaya? You're seated there because, not because you fell from heaven like manna. It is because the citizens of the Rakanidhi brought you here. And you have to listen to them. So, Mr. Speaker, we have two choices, and only two choices in this country right now, is to wake up and smell the coffee and know that shit has already hit the fan. Or we resign. All of us go home, we dissolve the government, new elections are held. Let people who care about the fiduciary responsibility of this country come back here. So, Mr. Speaker, we have failed and we have got no business being here. Okay? We have got no business being here. So, Mr. Speaker, I rest my case. But I support the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this motion. Mr. Speaker, I respectfully oppose this motion. Mr. Speaker, it is my view that this is the time when we should come together in a bipartisan manner to reason together on how to resolve the many issues that our children, and I'm calling them children, not in a derogatory manner, I'm calling them children because I'm a mother of Gen Zs. Mr. Speaker, the events that happened yesterday in this country are historic, not because the young people managed to break in and come to Parliament. They are historic because it was a large statement about how Parliament has failed. And the sooner we understand that, the better. Mr. Speaker, our sense of importance is so inflated as members of Parliament that we don't even get the point. Mr. Speaker, we need to calm down and remember, and I've said here more than 4 times, that we must remember we are messengers of the people. We are not lords of the people. Mr. Speaker, yesterday was the moment to make every member of Parliament to reflect and remember that we are here to represent. We are not here about ourselves, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Gen Zs and the other young people who are on the streets form over 75% of the population of Kenya. So we need to listen to them, whether we like it or not. And if we don't like it, we will actually be driven out of these houses. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, my view is we cannot run away. We need to be here to discuss the issues. Mr. Speaker, we might want to suggest that we focus on different issues rather than what we have on order paper, but we use the 2 weeks to discuss pertinent issues on what the Gen Zs have raised in their concerns. Mr. Speaker, can I request that those on the side who are speaking loudly sit down and listen or go out and speak out there? It is a sign of disrespect for this session. Mr. Speaker, as I had said, the young people have gave us enough notice about the demonstrations. They went on the streets with twigs, Mr. Speaker. And they came all the way and reached here. I was in this compound, Mr. Speaker. I was among the few MPs who are trying to plead with the security members to allow us to see whether we can speak to them. But they started shooting. And as they started shooting, they actually killed a few people, a few of those young people. After a while, they then allowed, and I believe that was deliberate, to allow the Gen Zs into the compound in order to say we shot them dead because they had come to Parliament. Mr. Speaker, this Parliament is not bigger than the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, none of us here is bigger than the people of Kenya. And I want to ask that the members of Parliament humble themselves. I want to ask that members of Parliament listen to what people are saying. We have mothers on the streets, if you're listening, who are actually pleading with the president and pleading with us to listen to them. What does it cost for us to listen to them? I feel even those who used ambulances were abusing our position as members of Parliament. Ambulances should have been carrying those who are sick, not members of Parliament trying to get them here. We need to smell the coffee, Mr. Speaker. What we need to do is to schedule special sessions to invite the CS Kindiki of Internal Security to find out why they used bullets on young people. We need to summon CS for Defense, Aden Duale, if at all that Gazette notice he issued, if he actually issued it. Because this Parliament no longer cares about the Constitution of Kenya. As Senator Omogeni has said, in fact, we should be instructing the Speaker to write an advisory to the President not to assent to the finance bill because it breached the Constitution. Through the finance bill, they have amended laws that affect counties. Therefore, the finance bill should have come to the Senate. This House should be sitting, instructing lawyers to go to court and stop the finance bill. We cannot do that if we take a break. This Senate should be sitting to find out how best can we reach out to the Gen Zs to speak with them, Mr. Speaker. They gave a notice for Thursday, assuming they're coming on Thursday. This House should be present to say, can we have the Thursday demonstrations differently done so that we are here to receive them and they come peacefully. We should not be running away. This House should be sitting to find out how many of us can be sent to represent the Senate in the different funerals of the children who have died. They should not be running away from this. Mr. Speaker, I therefore suggest respectfully that we consider reorganizing the order of the House to discuss these pertinent issues that have been raised by these children. One of each is to try and look at the budget that the Treasury submitted to the Treasury. These children have looked at this budget and they are telling us you cannot be overtaxing our parents when you are putting monies into different places. Why are we as Parliament not willing to look at the budget items in order to find out what these children are telling us? Mr. Speaker, the Gen Zs are not stupid. They are not. The Gen Zs are trying to call us to order as members of Parliament. I think we have an inflated sense of importance that we've even forgotten who we are. We need to calm down and remember we are messengers of the people. I am therefore suggesting that the remainder of the members who are speaking, please do not accept for us to go on session. Let us get back and let us sit, let us summon the necessary people we need to summon in order to discuss the issues that happened yesterday. Mr. Speaker, as a finalizer, I want to empathize with all the families that have lost their loved ones. And I want to ask, as members of Parliament, let us find out who they are, let us represent ourselves and actually be humble enough to mourn with those families. I also want to ask C.S. Kindiki that all the young people you have instructed to be abducted to actually be released. Mr. Speaker, more than 10 young people have been abducted simply because they are bloggers. That is abuse of office. That is a violation of the right of expression. And we are asking that this must stop now. We must be a country that respects the rule of law.
Senator Carthy, just
Honorable Speaker, I have captured Honorable Catherine Muma say that Kindiki has instructed people to abduct bloggers. I don't know whether she has that evidence that she can tell before this House that Kindiki instructed people to abduct bloggers. Is there any evidence for that effect, Honorable Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, I want to withdraw what I've said and say that the CS for internal security should bring to this House information on who has abducted young bloggers who are simply expressing themselves. It is his responsibility. He cannot run away from it. If he cannot do that, he should resign and let somebody else take responsibility. Mr. Speaker, we cannot kill our children and think we will be okay. We cannot use so much force and expect we will go into our houses and sleep. I personally cannot sleep. I cannot sleep from what I watched here yesterday, outside of the Parliament, where we were pleading, but they were going on with the guns. And those kids only had twigs. The stones came because the bullets were coming. The stones came because the canisters were coming every minute. Those kids were unarmed. Mr. Speaker, I saw a clip where one police officer is contemplating resigning because his brother was killed by another police officer. I want to tell our police officers, I know your job is difficult, but remember your Kenyans. Remember you also have children. Do not allow anybody to use you to break the law. using live bullet on an armed person is breaking the law. We need to call ourselves to order as leaders. Finally, I'm pleading with the president. Listening is not cowardice. Mr. President, listening is not cowardice. I can assure you the finance bill is not bigger than the people of Kenya. That finance bill is unconstitutional because it has phrases or it has clauses that should have come to the Senate. If your people have not told you that, please listen to us. Retreat, not even because of the Senate, retreat because of these young people. Call them and also explain boldly how you can justify the budget lines that the Treasury has actually cleared in the National Assembly. And I would want to say shame on the National Assembly for passing a budget that has budget items that are embarrassing for the nation. And that both sides of the aisle actually passed the budget. They were wrong on that. And listen to the people of Kenya. I oppose, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Wakili.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to thank you for giving me this moment to share the grief and send my messages of condolences to the many people who suffered yesterday. We lost a good number of Kenyans, both property that was destroyed not within Parliament alone, but outside Parliament, and I stand a very sad Kenyan today. I stand to support this motion because there is wisdom in the decision that the SBC did take in the morning to adjourn the House and arrange the program of this House. Mr. Speaker, it is a very sad day because the experiences that we had yesterday from within this House and various places in the country has never happened before. While we appreciate, Mr. Speaker, the constitutional entitlement of each Kenyan to demonstrate, the demonstrations that went outside yesterday have never been experienced before. The attack on Parliament has never happened before. Colleagues here have talked. Some have supported the motion to adjourn. Some have said it is not the right thing to do. Mr. Speaker, whereas it is the time for us as a House to reflect, we cannot reflect on what happened. We cannot reflect on a way forward on the issues that have happened when the House is in session, when discussions are ongoing. Mr. Speaker, the issues that have been flown left, right, center are heavy issues that each one of us as a leader representing certain interest, whether from our position as senators, our positions as leaders of various groups, or even at the National Assembly, are serious concerns that even as we ask ourselves the big question of whether to adjourn or not, we can only do so when we have appreciated the fact that it is not just about yesterday, it is beyond yesterday. The attack in Parliament, Mr. Speaker, alone, the safety of everyone here was at stake yesterday. It is not something that can just be taken lightly and assumed that we can proceed to run the business of the House as if everything is normal. It is not normal. And Mr. Speaker, the issues that are there are issues that each and every one of us can at their personal level reflect. And the time with which the motion is asking that we do take a break is to allow members an opportunity to reflect and think through and begin to ask ourselves, where did the rain begin to beat us? Mr. Speaker, the comments that we are all making seems to be doing what I would say the right on the Book of Lamentations. We are not here to lament. We are here to give solutions. We are here to guide. We are here to think through. And when we support or oppose this motion as though we are all lamenting, we are not helping the situation at all. And so, the motion to adjourn is in good faith. I believe there must have been great wisdom by the Senate Business Committee to say this is the right time to take a break and deal with this situation when people of Kenya have also equally reflected on what happened in this country yesterday. Mr. Speaker, I support this motion and I appreciate the opportunity granted to me as we mourn our brothers and sisters, the young generations whom we lost yesterday, and also the destruction of the property, which as a leader, as a Kenyan, I do not support, and it's condemned with the strongest terms possible. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Senator Veronica.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this motion, which I support, that it's time to take a recess, a short recess, Mr. Speaker, for the leaders and the nation to have a deep reflection of the events that took place yesterday. Mr. Speaker, from a personal view, it's a very sad day for the history of Kenya. And Mr. Speaker, the history we wrote yesterday as a nation is not anything we can be very proud of, Mr. Speaker. Why? Because when I recall the sequence of issues that led and events that led to yesterday's experience, Mr. Speaker, it's very, very sad state of affairs. It began very well, Mr. Speaker. There was the Gen Z who needed a conversation, who needed to be heard, which is correct, and rightfully so, Mr. Speaker, because they are citizens in this republic, Mr. Speaker. And there was a guide that was given by the Minister for Security, Mr. Speaker. I remember he gave an address. He detailed how that right in Article 37, the right to demonstrate and picket, was going to be carried out, Mr. Speaker. And I also saw, Mr. Speaker, from the Law Society of Kenya, giving a sort of a guide on the do's and don'ts in the event of exercising of Article 37 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. In that guide that was given by LSK, which is supposed to be a neutral body, Mr. Speaker, the Gen Z was guided very well that they should not go near institutions, Mr. Speaker, which are secured, institutions like Parliament, places like State House. They were guided very, very well not to interfere with the integrity of the institution, Mr. Speaker. So the conversation, the morning section was good, Mr. Speaker. I was in the House and we were conducting business as usual, Mr. Speaker, but we could hear tear gas being thrown in different parts, Mr. Speaker, because of the heavy masses that had gathered. What started well in the morning, Mr. Speaker, as an exercise of that right, was breached somewhere in the middle of the day, Mr. Speaker, when now there were other demonstrators who came in and the intention seemed to have been altered from the initial conversation which was needed by the Gen Z, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the masses wanted to break down into Parliament and they started burning things, and I could see some people who were even in the dining area, Mr. Speaker, having the lunch that was served there. While having the lunch may not be a big deal because that may be money that is from the taxpayers' coffers, Mr. Speaker, and which the members, by the way, usually pay for when they take a plate of food there, Mr. Speaker, while that may not have been a big issue, and those who have visited Parliament on a normal day know that they are always free to have that lunch anytime they are cleared at the gate to visit. And Parliament has never denied access to any member of public to actually visit the institution once they give the notice, Mr. Speaker. What was very worrying was the criminal intention that rode with the demonstration, Mr. Speaker. So the police were cornered, and it is very sad, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very saddened as a mother and as a leader in this nation to imagine that one teenager or one young person lost their life yesterday, and we deeply condole with those families. That was never the intention and should never have been the intention of that demonstration, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is an apparent conflict right here, Mr. Speaker. And it is normal for a family, for a community, for institutions to even have conflicts, Mr. Speaker. But how do we resolve those conflicts? Any institution, any family that is not able to resolve conflicts in a timely fashion and in a manner where people feel listened to, Mr. Speaker, it ends up very poorly, because if it's a couple, Mr. Speaker, there will be a divorce. If it's a family, there can be a breakup. If it's an institution, people go different ways, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the reason why we need this short break now is because we need to have a serious conversation. And this serious conversation is not about us and them, Mr. Speaker. It should be a Kenyan conversation, Mr. Speaker. We must take time, Mr. Speaker, now to listen to one another and hear what are these grievances, how can they be resolved. Does the Constitution offer a pathway for people to resolve these conflicts? I want to say this to our children, because the Gen Z are our children. The same Constitution that gave you Article 37 gives ventilation mechanism in the event that you have issues you want to ventilate to Parliament. You can do a petition, present it at the gate. Peaceably, that petition is taken, it's debated, Mr. Speaker, it is sent to a committee, members of public are invited, and they bring their views, Mr. Speaker. And I want to assure the Gen Z, the leaders who have been voted in this House, on very many occasions, they represent the views and the rights of the Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, so that we do not have integrity of institutions like Parliament, which are constitutional, Mr. Speaker, being denigrated to a point where people feel that they need to walk, maybe ban a few things, and then maybe they will be heard. That is the wrong approach, Mr. Speaker. And I think it is good we be honest with all of ourselves. As leaders, yes, we are willing to listen. Churches, open up your doors. Take the views of these people. Help them present the petitions. Guide them the right way. Because, Mr. Speaker, even if it was in our homes, when our young people, because we live with these young people and sometimes they don't agree with us even as parents, when our young people are not happy with maybe what is being dished out at home, the schools they are being taken to, do we tell them, can you take knives and walk all over, or do things that are so unprecedented or harmful to themselves and harmful to the other members of the society? No. We guide that, Mr. Speaker. As senators, we take this recess, Mr. Speaker. Let all the institutions open doors, present their views, let those views be given to Parliament. Members of Parliament are willing to listen, Mr. Speaker. And if anything has gone wrong, it can always be corrected. There is nothing that has gone wrong that cannot be corrected, Mr. Speaker. This nation has been through a very tough journey, Mr. Speaker. Even the making of Constitution 2010. Let people not forget, Mr. Speaker, that even during the making of Constitution 2010, people did not fully agree on the clauses that were being made. Yet there was a journey and there was a process. And in that journey and in that process, we do not need to have one person lost in the Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. And that is why we say, Mr. Speaker, as we take this recess, let's take a reflection, even as leaders. It is good, Mr. Speaker, for leaders that we are also sensitive, Mr. Speaker, to the plight of the people who are raising issues. So that, Mr. Speaker, when we sit down and discuss and agree on the grievances that people are having, Mr. Speaker, they need to be assured that the institution of Parliament stands to represent the people of Kenya. And that is our calling. It is the integrity of our calling. What we call upon the Gen Z to do is that as we take this recess, Mr. Speaker, and I believe and pray that the vote will be in favor of a short recess, Mr. Speaker. As we take this short recess, Mr. Speaker, our doors are open. We want to listen to you. We want to talk to the churches. We want to have the petitions that you have that you think they should be presented before Parliament. And we know we can come up with a conclusion. Because even when we later look at the constitutional amendments that we need, Mr. Speaker, even through the NADCO report, that listening has to be done, Mr. Speaker, and we are willing to do it as the institution of Parliament. And for those who planned mayhem, those who attacked institutions or businesses like Quickmart, I saw the Quickmart somewhere downtown was attacked, raided, many places banned. Was that necessary? Was that the exercise of Article 37? Let's answer the hard questions as Kenyans. Do we want to rebuild, or do we want to destroy first and then say we want to rebuild? As young people, as parents, what we want to do for this nation is to rebuild. Mr. Speaker, if we read the book of Nehemiah, Mr. Speaker, Nehemiah was charged with the heavy responsibility of rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, Mr. Speaker. I know he had a very tough task because there were those who were saying it cannot be rebuilt. This nation of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, is in the hands of not just the leaders, but the parents. It is in the hands of the youths. It's in the hands of our presidency and our deputy presidents. And we must all accept, we must work together to rebuild the walls of this nation and not to bring shame to our nation. Our nation, Mr. Speaker, is the one that has given birth to so many nations that have been in conflict around us, Mr. Speaker. And in hard times, Mr. Speaker, the true test of the strength of our nation will come when it is the hard time, Mr. Speaker. We should write a blueprint from here, Mr. Speaker, that nations that almost tilt are close to the edge of going down, Mr. Speaker, can regain and bounce back and give confidence to the people, Mr. Speaker. With that, Mr. Speaker, I beg to support the motion, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Senator Wambua.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to also add my voice to this motion. Mr. Speaker, this is not the first time that an adjournment motion is being sought after going through the necessary approvals. Mr. Speaker, I would say that perhaps this is the first time that an adjournment motion is being sought for the wrong reason and at the wrong time. Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity from the onset to declare that I, on behalf of the people of Kitui County, am opposed to an adjournment at this time. And for the following reasons, Mr. Speaker. One, the Speaker, it's basic knowledge that we have three arms of government. We have the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. The other two arms of government, the Speaker, the executive, and the judiciary, are working overdrive. They are on overdrive. They are working 24 hours. The legislature is seeking to take a break before they can even formally resume from another recess. The Speaker, I want to remind my colleagues, those who are proposing the adjournment, that already we look very bad in the eyes of Kenyans. We look very, very bad. In fact, we have just a very little window to reclaim our place in society. And going out on adjournment at this time is doing the right thing, is shooting ourselves in the foot. Mr. Speaker, we are representatives of the people in good time and in bad times. An argument has been put forth, and I agree with it, that we are actually occupying a premises that for all intents and purposes is a scene of crime. Parliament has been invaded. The premises of Parliament has been invaded. And there will be need for some investigations to be carried out to ascertain the extent of damage and prepare for repairs and rehabilitation. But, Mr. Speaker, the drafters of our Constitution had the wisdom and the presence of mind to know that Parliament does not necessarily have to sit in these premises. Article 126 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, and I want to persuade the Speaker if the majority whip can allow me to persuade the Speaker. I'm trying to persuade the Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Article 126 of the Constitution on the location of sittings of Parliament says that a sitting of either house may be held at any place within Kenya and may commence at any time that the house appoints. The Speaker, if it is true that it is not possible to continue holding sittings at a scene of crime, we could go and sit anywhere else, including a military barrack, if that is gazetted. We could sit in the old chambers. There are places we can sit and transact business. Mr. Speaker, to adjourn at this time would be the wrong thing to do in the face of the challenges that this country is facing. We will be running away from a problem. Mr. Speaker, I want to challenge a number of my colleagues that I have heard say certain things about Parliament and how, in their view, useless this house has become, and how people should perhaps resign. So, Speaker, you know, these sound bites stopped making sense to Kenyans a long time ago. Instead of a member rising and threatening that the best thing to do is for the house to be wound up, the Speaker, the right thing to do would be for a member to lead by example and tender a resignation so that now we know people are serious. Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to address myself to 3 institutions or 4. I will begin with the institution of the Cabinet Secretary for Defense. Speaker, I see that the KDF have been asked to come in and beef up security for the police. The Speaker, wrong move. Wrong move, Mr. Speaker, because the KDF, like any other defense officers in any other country in the world, are trained to do 3 things. And I wish the minority leader could listen to this, because he supported this motion. And the KDF are trained to do 3 things. 1 is to fight. The other thing is to kill. And the other thing is to die for their country in defense and against external aggression. The KDF is not trained in crowd control. They don't understand that language. They are not trained that way. Unless then what we are saying is, now come out and kill as many as you can. Unless that is the order. Mr. Speaker, let us keep our men and women in boots in the barracks. That's where they belong. Calling out the KDF on our children. Mr. Speaker, that is the more reason why this Senate must sit even beyond 6:30 every day to safeguard the lives of our people and the integrity of our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, The other institution that I want to address is the institution of the judiciary, and specifically the Chief Justice and the President of the Supreme Court of Kenya, Justice Martha Koome. The Speaker, I applaud Justice Martha Koome. She has the courage to lead from the front. I am beginning actually to admire the way she's doing her things. Then the Speaker, at a time that young people are being arrested left, right, and center, abducted, she very well articulates the provisions of Article 49 on the rights of affected persons, arrested persons. And she's saying the judiciary is ready to work overtime to hear cases, to make determinations, and to restore order in this country. Mr. Speaker, the other institution that I want to address myself to as I move towards closure is the presidency. The Speaker, I am the least qualified to advise President William Ruto. This advice that I'm giving him is unsolicited. I know he has a lot of advisors, qualified men and women. But the Speaker, I'm just begging the ear of the President for a minute or two that, Mr. President, you have a duty of care to listen to your children. Those children on the streets are your children. They call you their president. They have told you they have challenges with the cost of living. They have told you they have challenges with the way their parents are in trouble trying to fend for them. They have told you that corruption in your government stinks to high heavens. Mr. President, listen to your children. I say this because I know there are people telling the President that if he backs down on this finance bill 2024-2025, he will look weak. That the children will think that they have won against the President. Mr. President, I want to tell you, you are not in competition with your children. You are their leader. And listening and taking good counsel, even from a child, is not a sign of weakness. It is not a sign of cowardice. It's a sign of leadership. It's a sign of strength. Listen to your children. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, the police. I was in the premises of Parliament yesterday, Mr. Speaker, when all these things were happening. And I was surprised at how police liberally use live bullets on innocent people. I was surprised, Mr. Speaker. I stood next to an officer inside the premises of Parliament. An old man, an old officer, who had covered his face, but carrying a machine gun. And he was firing at the crowds. And I'm telling him, why are you doing this? In fact, a younger officer who was standing in front of him almost slapped him and told him, how can you be firing live bullets behind me? If you want to fire live bullets, stand in front of me. And the men went on firing and shooting. So when I hear my colleagues here say that the intention was not to kill, as Speaker, I ask myself, when you fire live bullets into a crowd, what do you expect? What do you expect? In fact, I really thank God that the numbers are not what this officer and officers like him intended them to be. The intention to kill was evident, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the clergy have spoken. Even as late as last evening, the clergy have spoken. Not once, not twice, many times. The Speaker, professional bodies, including the Law Society of Kenya, including teachers' organizations, including medics, professional bodies have spoken. The Speaker, the business community has spoken. Investors, both local, regional, and international, have spoken. And they have said, the ambassadors have spoken. And they have said, Mr. President, this is too much. The Finance Bill 2024-2025 is not just unacceptable, it's unbearable. The Mama Bogas were here a few days ago, and they said the same thing. Our children are speaking now. Who else, Mr. President, do you want to speak? And what other language do you want to hear? My appeal, as I sit, Mr. Speaker, is to the President of the Republic of Kenya. His Excellency, Dr. William Samoei Ruto. Don't assent to this bill. Return that bill. Let us revert to status quo. Give this country an opportunity to heal. Give expression to the voices of the children and the mothers who are saying they can't take this anymore. Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to agree with me that this is the wrong time. The reasons given are the wrong reasons for us to adjourn. Let us continue our sittings. We can do all those other things. We can reflect. Mr. Speaker, sittings and reflection are not mutually exclusive. You can have Senate sittings and still reflect on what is happening in the country. I mean, you don't have to be at home to reflect. Mr. Speaker, I conclude by condoling with the families of those children, our children, that have been killed by police officers whose intention was expressly to kill. We condole those families and pray that the grace of God shall firmly rest upon them through this mourning period. Mr. Speaker, I oppose.
Senator Asige Crystal.
Thank you very much, Speaker. As the only visually impaired senator in the House, it was difficult for me to know if I would catch your eye, but I'm glad that I have. And I thank you for the opportunity to also, with some of my colleagues, oppose this motion. Mr. Speaker, I've heard a colleague use the book of Nehemiah to prosecute her support of this motion. But what exactly did Nehemiah say when he was urged to retreat? What was Nehemiah's decision when people were trying to distract him from his work? Mr. Speaker, Nehemiah said, I am doing a good work and I cannot come down. And that's what Gen Z are also saying to the executive and to members of parliament, that they are doing a good work, standing up, speaking for themselves and for their colleague young men and women who are out in the streets, Mr. Speaker, and they cannot come down. And neither should we in this Senate. How can we go on a recess? Why are we going on a recess? We have just come from a 3-week recess period, Speaker. Why do we need 2 more weeks to reflect? This is a house of reflection, and we have to do it while we're sitting in these seats and when we're speaking in these microphones. That's what we're here to do. Parliament stands to represent its people. Parliament, Mr. Speaker, does not close to run away from its people. I want to urge and persuade those who have not spoken yet to also concur in opposing this motion, not because of disrespect, but because of respect for the young men and women who have lost lives, who are now muted because they cannot speak due to yesterday's horrifying scenes. We can't go home. Are we trying to say that renovations of windows and offices are more important than speaking for bloodshed and lives lost yesterday? We cannot, Mr. Speaker. And I, as a young person, as the first young person speaking to this motion, as a youth in this House, I am speaking for the youth who are outside of this House. We cannot go on a recess. It is wrong, and it would be completely insensitive to do so. Mr. Speaker, darkness fears democracy. I rarely wake up in the morning wishing for my eyesight to be restored, but what a sight to be able to behold. This last week had me aching with desire to see my fellow youth in the most spectacular display of patriotism, camaraderie, and putting up a first-rate masterclass on demanding that governments be held to account for the entire world to see. And yes, they have seen. But unity, Mr. Speaker, has been violently gunned down in the streets, not by men, but by monsters who have no concern for human life. Although this government has demonstrated that lifeless Kenyan bodies are not to take precedence over their punitive finance bill, young Kenyans have looked their oppressor dead in the eye and shown them that when it comes down to the wire, there are only 2 times to be brave: when you feel like it and when you don't. My profound disappointment with the current government and its forceful assault on crowds of innocent youth, Speaker, by its nefarious police officers who have gone rogue on unarmed young citizens peacefully exercising their constitutional right towards an uncaring, a corrupt, and wasteful government in their eyes that has turned its back on them, cannot be emphasized enough, Speaker. The brute force used against young, unarmed protesters reveals the operating system built into the fabric of today's government. And when they kill us, Speaker, They're killing themselves. The arrogance from some of these top government officials has been outrageously condescending to young people, disgusting and reminiscent of narcissistic abuse. You call us wankers and clueless children of plunderers. Then you say you're proud of us for making our voices heard peacefully. Then abduct defenseless children using state machinery and escalate a peaceful demonstration of young people with phones, twigs, and water bottles in their hands into barbaric scenes of bloodshed. Young people, Mr. Speaker, were not out to kill. In fact, I was here on this premises yesterday when everything set off. And whilst I was separated from my security guard, Mr. Speaker, I also saw another member of parliament from the National Assembly who is a wheelchair user, who voted yes to the finance bill, also having been separated from his team and his aides and bodyguard. He was stranded, Mr. Speaker, couldn't run, couldn't hide in his wheelchair. And you know what happened when those kids entered this premises? 3 young boys saw this member of parliament who voted yes for the finance bill, and instead of reprimanding him, instead of reading him their minds, giving them a piece of their minds, you know what they did? They actually carried this member of parliament in his wheelchair to the tunnel so that he can go and seek refuge across in Bunge Towers. And then the 3 boys ran back and joined their fellow comrades. That's what happened. These kids don't operate in mendacity, Mr. Speaker. They are moral youth who are just trying to get their voices heard. So this peddling of a message or narrative that these youth are evil, they are killers and criminals, they're not. That is completely misguided and untrue. Why don't these policemen punch in their own weight class, Mr. Speaker? That's my question. I've been asking myself, would they come into parliament and try and abduct or take on Aledama or Lekina? Would they be able to have the balls to come and abduct and violate the safety of Samson Cherargei? They wouldn't, Speaker, because they know that all they're doing is showing a brute force, using their shields and using their armor and using their artillery, pouring it on young defenseless Kenyans. And you know, clinical psychologists will tell you that narcissists will first love bomb you, then they'll manipulate you, then they'll gaslight you into believing their lies, then they devalue you, and finally, Speaker, they discard you once they have what they want. We young people have seen every single stage of these narcissistic behaviors in this government. And since they complained that over 8 million of us did not come out to have our voices heard in the 2022 elections, Mr. Speaker, we are here now. And an estimated 25 million came outside in every corner of the country yesterday to say that we reject this finance bill because we would rather die on our feet than live on our knees. We are not the generation who are silenced with every carrot dangled in front of them, Mr. Speaker. We are the generation that asks questions and demands accountability because we understand that we are rich, and only if the money that we refuse tastes better than the money that we accept. Gone are the days, Speaker, when governments can rely on using methods to numb their people through controlling the media, through controlling education, and controlling the church, which used to be houses of God, and now have turned into dens of thieves. So, Mr. Speaker, we're saying as young people, go ahead, push that narrative all you want about our international financier. That's a scapegoat, because you won't find one. Unity is our financier. Liberation, passion, justice, anger, disillusionment, and dissatisfaction are all our financiers. This is the reason why I oppose going on recess, Mr. Speaker, especially at such a sensitive time in our country. Mr. Speaker, this finance bill is without a doubt designed to be esoteric. I believe that it's relied upon for citizens not to understand this document in full. The Prime Cabinet Secretary said a few days back, if the finance bill 2024 fails to pass, the implications are serious. It could result in a complete shutdown of the government and signal a vote of no confidence from the public. These and many statements, Mr. Speaker, are being peddled by government officials, and none of them are true. They tell the public how ominous the failure of the passing of the bill will be, but that's not true. Yet, Mr. Speaker, if the bill were to pass without the consent of the people, it will split the entire nation, and that's not what we want to see. Mr. Speaker, the President still has an opportunity to not put pen to paper. The Constitution clearly says that he has 14 days to assent to any bill that comes from Parliament, and he can still, right now, today, in this moment, decide not to sign this bill into ascension. Mr. Speaker, I just want to conclude so I can give other members a moment to also contribute, but to just say that young people are tired. Young people are exhausted. They don't have jobs. How would they have money to look for artillery and knives and guns? But still, we poured every single piece of armor on these young children yesterday, Mr. Speaker. And as a young person myself, I am disgusted, I am appalled, I am completely beside myself. And I want to conclude by saying that my heart goes out to the families and loved ones who have lost people yesterday. Mr. Speaker, I was disappointed to hear the President's speech yesterday. I'd hoped that more unity would have come from it, but there was no empathy for the pain that Kenya is feeling right now, Mr. Speaker. There was absolutely no sign of benevolence when he spoke, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would have hoped that the President would have come to unify, would have stood in that address and unified the nation, but instead he threatened. Instead he was glassy. Instead he was cold. And Mr. Speaker, I just want to comfort those in closing by saying that even though they cut our wings and tie our feet, still we will rise. Viva comrades.
Now, Honorable Senators, it is 12:30, in fact 12:32. So pursuant to Standing Order 34-2A, I'm going to add a further 15 minutes so that we conclude business. I will therefore allow Senator Kajwang 5 minutes and then call the mover. We need to conclude business. That's why I've even added. Proceed, Senator Kajwang.
Mr. Speaker,
Senator
Speaker, I feel
Mazayo,
very victimized.
There's no senator who is on their feet. So who are you calling to order? You approach the chair, Senator Mazayo.
Mr. Speaker, I feel very victimized on behalf of the people of Homa Bay, that our views can be truncated to 5 minutes, while other delegations have had 15 minutes to convince this House on which direction we should take. On the onset, and under those circumstances, if I'm to speak for 5 minutes, I oppose this motion because I need time to come here and talk on behalf of the people of Homa Bay. And 5 minutes is not going to be adequate for me to speak on behalf of the Gen Zs of Homa Bay and the Gen Zs of the Republic of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I oppose this motion, and that then should guarantee me an opportunity to come back here and continue my debate. I want to start by sending condolences, personal and on behalf of the people of Homa Bay, to the many families that today are mourning their loved ones. The reality is hitting slowly. Many people are still in denial that the little boys and girls who left their homes yesterday are today sleeping in a morgue. Mr. Speaker, even if it was you, with a teenage or a grown son, 20-year-old, you had breakfast with him in the morning. You told him about the kind of things that you expect and wish for this nation. You reminded him that the Constitution protects him, that he can go and protest, he can go and present petitions to public authorities. Mr. Speaker, you even told him that we've got a reasonable government and we've got a reasonable security force that will ensure that you are protected. And then, Mr. Speaker, you get a call that your son is lying at City Mortuary. Your son is lying in a morgue somewhere in Eldoret. Your son is lying in a morgue in Nakuru. That is a reality we are dealing with, Mr. Speaker. We cannot run away from our constitutional mandate when we have our people lying in morgues, others lying in hospitals, others lying in detention centers. Mr. Speaker, the very least we should do is to call the CS for Interior this afternoon to come to this house to tell us the number of people who were killed yesterday while exercising their constitutional rights. Number two, the CS must tell us the number of people being held incommunicado by the police and other paramilitary forces in this republic. Mr. Speaker, we need to know how many people are in hospitals with gunshot wounds. We cannot go on recess until those questions are answered. Mr. Speaker, we need to be calling some governors, like the governor of Nairobi, to tell us what happened in Nairobi where City Hall was set aflame. Mr. Speaker, I know people are saying that when I call him to the Public Accounts Committee, he will tell me all the records were burnt by Gen Z. When you go to ask him for his academic certificate, he will tell you that it was burnt by Gen Z. We need to put a stop to this nonsense, Mr. Speaker. We cannot go on recess until these issues are resolved. Mr. Speaker, we must put a stop to the arrogance that we are seeing in the ruling class of this country. We must put a stop and make sure that people live within their means and people who have consumed public resources do not come and vomit on our shoes and on our feet. And Mr. Speaker, we know them. Some of them are in this house. Some of them are in the executive. We cannot go on recess until we have held them to account and delivered them to Gen Z for punishment or for necessary action. Of course, action within the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, why do we want to run away from our duty when Parliament sits even when a country is at war? Is it because we don't have lunch? If we don't have lunch, Senator Hamida has always provided meals for us. Is it because we have got broken windows? Mr. Speaker, we cannot lament about broken windows when we have broken limbs and people out there. And we should also stop this blame of Gen Zs. Mr. Speaker, look at our curriculum. What have these children or these adults, new adults, been fed on in the school curriculum? These are the products of the free primary education of Mwai Kibaki and Raila Odinga. Their curriculum, when it comes to Fasihi and literature, Mr. Speaker, reads as follows. They read The Animal Farm, and it is about injustice. They read Kidagaa Kimemwozea. They read Tumbo Lisiloshiba, Kifo Kisimani, Mstahiki Meya, Mashetani, and Parliament of Alls. Mr. Speaker, that is the recent set book in literature, Parliament of Alls. And then you blame Gen Zs for coming to this parliament? A parliament of alls, a parliament of sellouts, a parliament of turncoats, a parliament that is completely insensitive to them. We are the ones who have fed them this kind of literature, and we are reaping what we sowed at this moment. Mr. Speaker, we cannot go on recess until the president apologizes to the youth of this country. Since when did the hustlers become mutineers? Since when did our hustlers and children become wankers? Mr. Speaker, since when did our Gen Zs, our children, become saboteurs? Since when did they connive to commit treason? Mr. Speaker, the youth and the public and the nation deserves an apology, not the intransigent posture that we saw from President Ruto yesterday. And leadership, Mr. Speaker, sometimes we need to go back to the Bible. Look at the book of Exodus and how God hardened the heart of Pharaoh. Not once, not twice, not thrice, but almost 5 times. But eventually, God was trying to teach Pharaoh a lesson. Pharaoh William Ruto, God is teaching you a lesson. You have hardened your heart. Your children are in morgues. They are in hospitals. You are calling them criminals. You are calling them saboteurs. Mr. Speaker, even in the hardest of circumstances, God will rescue his people. And God will rescue his children. God will rescue this nation from the clutches of people who do not care about those who put them in office. They care about state dinners in foreign lands. They do not care about the welfare of the people that they're supposed to represent. We cannot go on recess until we call the president, because the Constitution empowers us to call any person, and that includes the president, to come here as a chair of the National Security Committee and to tell us the actions that they are taking to ensure that the cost of living is managed, but also the flagrant abuse of human rights and constitutional rights is also stemmed. Mr. Speaker, we cannot go on recess until the legal committee carries out an inquiry on the circumstances that led to the mess of yesterday. Until the trade committee talks to small-scale traders in Tomboya and Ronalngala and find out the extent of losses yesterday. Until the finance committee makes a strong case for Senate to consider the finance bill because it has provisions that relate to county governments. Until this House takes a resolution on the basis of Senator Mtata's letter that Parliament means Senate and the National Assembly, and the Senate must be involved in provision of budgets for constitutional offices and independent offices as per Article 249 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, if we went on recess until that date in July, all these things are going to happen, all these things are going to pass, and by the time we come back, it will be water under the bridge. We cannot go on recess until the Cohesion Committee calls for all relevant stakeholders to have a conversation on the intergenerational conflict and the intergenerational divide that we are seeing emerging. Mr. Speaker, we cannot go on recess until the staff of Parliament, their security, their safety and well-being is guaranteed and assured. If anyone bore the brunt of yesterday's disruption, it was our staff. Our offices were not touched, Mr. Speaker. We were safe in Bunge Towers. But many of these clerks sitting here, their windows are broken, they were shaken, the uniforms of sergeant-at-arms were taken away. Mr. Speaker, we cannot go on recess until we are told that the Commission spent 3.2 billion on an advanced security solution. It was tested yesterday. Does it work? We are not going on recess, Mr. Speaker, until we get answers to these questions. Mr. Speaker, we are not going on recess until our friends and brothers and sisters on the other political divide approach their political leader to tell him, as Pharaoh was also cancelled by his counselors, but God has designed that his heart should remain hardened. Please, our colleagues, Senator Cherargei, Senator Lelegwe, you've got the ear and access to the president. What benefit do you get by leading a dead nation, by leading an injured nation, by leading a sick nation, by leading an unhappy nation? Whose happiness is more important? Is it Joe Biden or is it the people of Kenya? President Ruto, we expect you to climb down and we expect you to respond to the concerns of Kenyans. We expect you to talk to your children. We expect you to provide leadership. If that does not happen, Mr. Speaker, the Gen Zs have shown us yesterday what they're capable of doing. Revolutions start like that. If you look and if you read A Tale of Two Cities, which is Charles Dickens' account of the French Revolution, revolutions start like it did yesterday. Do we want a revolution in Kenya? Perhaps we need a revolution. But Mr. Speaker, I conclude by crying out to my party leader, Raila Amolo Odinga. Baba, we need you. Baba, how I wish you didn't have to go to Addis Ababa. Baba, how I wish you were here to provide leadership, to provide counsel, to provide statesmanship, to provide direction for a country that is in dire need of leadership, of direction and of statesmanship. What we don't have in this country is statesmanship. We have politicians. We have people who have come across cash. They do not know how to conduct themselves in the presence of cash. Like someone who has been hungry for too long and finds a huge banquet on the table. They are now just showing us what they call madharau in Swahili. Mr. Speaker, we hope that this nation will not degenerate. Because when it goes down, it does not matter whether you're a senator or a member of National Assembly or a member of UDA or Azimio. We all go down. Baba, we need you.
Now, Senator Kajwang, I've given you 11 minutes. You've spoken for 11 minutes, courtesy of the request you made on behalf of the people of Homa Bay. Yes, Senator Peris Tobiko.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you for this opportunity. And Mr. Speaker, I take this time to oppose the motion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I strongly feel we cannot adjourn at this moment, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we cannot run away. We cannot run away from our children. We cannot run away from the issues that are being raised now. Mr. Speaker, this is the best forum for us to engage in the conversation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, because of the fact that we have not had a chance to debate the finance bill as the Senate, Mr. Speaker, then this is the opportunity for us to engage with the issues that have been raised by the demonstrators, Mr. Speaker. There are pertinent issues, Mr. Speaker. Issues on taxes, Mr. Speaker. Issues about cost of living, Mr. Speaker. Cost of doing business, Mr. Speaker. Issues about taxation on land, Mr. Speaker. Freehold versus leasehold, Mr. Speaker. It is important that we engage in this debate, Mr. Speaker. In fact, issues to do with land are basically issues that affect counties, Mr. Speaker. These are things we need to speak about, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we also need to talk to the police, Mr. Speaker, on how to handle peaceful demonstrations, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Gen Zs, the millennials, and all others who are demonstrating, Mr. Speaker, started a very peaceful demonstration, Mr. Speaker. We saw last week, Mr. Speaker, these young people were even going to take selfies with the police. They were having bottles of water and their phones, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, they never meant any harm to anybody. They just wanted to pass a strong statement, Mr. Speaker, to the country at large and to the leadership, Mr. Speaker. And we need to listen, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will urge the President to listen to these young people because they are the same people who elected him, Mr. Speaker. They elected him because they had hope in him. And they still have hope in him, Mr. Speaker, that, Mr. Speaker, he is able to change this country. Given an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, these young people are learned. They are people, Mr. Speaker, who know what is going on in the rest of the world, Mr. Speaker, and they know the future of this country belongs to them. Mr. Speaker, it is very important that we engage in this conversation instead of running away. In fact, Mr. Speaker, parliaments do sit even at times of war. And we are not at war, Mr. Speaker. This country is peaceful. This country only needs, our police only need to know how to handle demonstrators. As far as I'm concerned, Mr. Speaker, the police should have escorted the demonstrators. They should have led them to the right streets, Mr. Speaker, and also tell them these are protected areas. You cannot enter these premises because there are consequences, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I don't think it is time for the Senate to go on some forced recess, Mr. Speaker, and we can hold meetings in any other venue. It doesn't have to be on this venue, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is a sad day for our country. And in fact, I was looking at all the ladies today in this house, and I realized just by sheer coincidence, and maybe because of what we are all feeling, each person in this house today is dressed in black and white. Because we are mourning the children we lost. We are mourning our young people who should not have died, but today they are in the morgues, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I agree with these young people. Rex and the others should not have died, Mr. Speaker. There was no reason to die because they were holding peaceful picketing, Mr. Speaker. And we should allow, this country should know how to handle democracy better. Mr. Speaker, we cannot purport to be a democratic nation, but also be dictatorial at the same time, Mr. Speaker. It's not possible. Mr. Speaker, we must be accommodative to democracy. We must be accommodative to the rights of same, Mr. Speaker, even when the majority will have their way, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I feel very strongly the Senate should be allowed to engage with the issues of the finance bill, and the finance bill should come to the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker, because it is important that we represent our counties on issues that are very important in that bill, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I arise to oppose the recess, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
We've seen stage one. Assuming that Uhuru Kenyatta wins today, he will be looking to the Amani coalition and